Hello, this is Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I'm recording this on June 24th. Thank you for joining. Please help support the work that I do by being a paid member to my Patreon channel or my Substack channel, and you can donate on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Today, we're going to go over the news, anything breaking, give you my perspective of what's happening in the markets, and I'm going to tell you how to improve your health and wellness. So thank you for joining. Please share the links and ask your social media to follow me. All the links are in the description of this video and all my videos to sign up for all the different channels that I have. The S&P 500 futures market, as of this recording, is trading at 7,454. So I suspect that we're going to be a little bit higher when the open happens. The VIX is trading at 1897. So it's starting to go down. So there's a little bit of less stress. The last 3 days or so have been sell-offs. The dollar is strengthening. And there's been some rumblings that the BOJ may be raising rates, the Bank of Japan. The euro is trading at 113 relative to the dollar, and the Japanese yen is trading at 161.72. That's a little bit weak for the yen, and the BOJ is concerned about that. Now, let's talk about oil for a sec here. We're trading at 70, as of this recording, $71.03, and natural gas is trading at 3.180. There could be a range bound, depending on what happens with the discussions in the Middle East and the flow of oil. But as long as the flow of oil keeps on happening, and things seem somewhat stable with the negotiations, and there's no kinetic events that take place between Iran and the United States, or Iran and the GCC, or maybe even Iran and Israel. As long as that doesn't happen, and there seems to be some movement of peace through this agreement, and the oil keeps on flowing through, oil will continue to trade down. So I'm going to give you some ranges here. There's a support level at about 69. So let's just round it to 70. We're at 71.08. I suspect that it probably will bounce off of the 70 or 69 level, and then maybe start trading up a little bit higher to about 73. So in the short term, you may actually see a little bit of a range trade between 70 to 73. Now, if things seem to start breaking apart and there's questions about oil flowing through the strait, then your new range trade would be probably around 72 to about 80. So that's oil for WTI. Natural gas is trading at 3.18. It should be trading around 3 right now. And as we go into July, it should continue to start trading down. It wouldn't surprise me if it traded below 3. So shorting natural gas probably would be a good idea. But there has been this inverse correlation between natural gas and oil. As oil is going down, there seems to be traders that want to bid natural gas up. So beware of that correlation. It's not rational, but markets don't have to be rational. All you have to do is notice the pattern. The pattern could coincide with rationality. It may not. So just keep that in mind. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the primaries that happened yesterday. New York has even more representatives that are part of the Socialist Party, the Democratic Socialist Party. So we're going to play a clip on that. Before we do, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver lozenges. You can get it in Manuka honey and orange splash, fortified with vitamin C. These structural nano silver lozenges will neutralize, help mitigate allergies. You take them during the cold season, perfect to take prophylactically if you're cleaning the house or in the yard or in the basement, cleaning or garage. So please go to my store, get the structural nail silver lozenges, take them when you need them. And I have structural nail silver toothpaste. Get a few tubes for your household. This toothpaste has no fluoride. It'll neutralize, whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, reduce inflammation at the gum line, help the health of the gum line, and having good oral hygiene can help with your cardiovascular health and your valvular health. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get a few tubes of this toothpaste. It's a very high quality toothpaste. You should be taking it every day, especially during the cold season, because it neutralizes. And again, it has no fluoride. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, use discount 5. Let's play this video about more socialists on the horizon.
There is socialism among young people in America, but do they know about its dismal past and history of failure?
A Fox News alert. And did you feel that? A socialist earthquake overnight as 3 Zoran Mamdani-backed challengers win their Democrat primaries and drag their party even further to the left. And while Mamdani becomes the party's new kingmaker, some Democrats are preparing to fight back.
Plus, President Trump making his economic pitch in Pennsylvania as gas prices fall. But the president has a new target that he says is making it harder for you to pay at the pump.
And foreign World Cup fans obsessing over ranch. I'm not talking about a one-story home. I'm talking about the dressing. May be in luck trying to get it back home. We're going to tell you about the amazing and quick move by one brand to make sure our fellow humans throughout the world can bring what we give to the world, which is ranch, back to their home countries. It's what you need to know. You're watching Fox Supreme First here on a Wednesday morning. I'm Todd Park.
And I'm Partnership Gibson. We begin with Madeline Rivera with the very latest on the primary results coming in this morning. And Maddie, it was a socialist sweep in New York City.
That's right, Carly and Todd. New York City Mayor Zoran Mamdani says the results of Tuesday's primaries were the beginning of a political movement. One of the far-left candidates he backed beat a 5-term incumbent in New York's 13th congressional district. Congressman Adriano Espaillat, the chair of the Hispanic Congressional Caucus, lost his seat to Democratic Socialist Darjalisa Avila Chevalier. In New York's 10th congressional district, Mamdani-backed progressive leader Brad Lander ousted Congressman Dan Goldman, who was the lead prosecutor in Trump's first impeachment trial. And in New York's 7th congressional district, another Democratic Socialist member, Claire Valdez, won the Democratic nomination. Chevalier and Lander have said they want to abolish ICE. They've also been critical of Israel. Valdez, meanwhile, wants a state takeover of utilities and housing and unions for all, and said Free Palestine was on the ballot.
Solidarity is the force that we need to vanquish Trump's fascism, to abolish ICE, to stand up to the billionaires.
Abolish ICE. Free Palestine.
See that? Abolish ICE. What are they saying? Basically, do not have law enforcement to prevent illegal immigration. Free Palestine. So what they really want is for Israel to lose their land. Now, I've been saying for a while here, no one deserves anything unless you can protect it, right? If you can't protect the land, if you can't protect your country, you don't deserve it. So this policy is about defunding Israel. Now, Israel should be defunded. We should stop using our tax-paying dollars to fund Israel, but we should also do the same to the Palestinians. We should not be funding that region at all. And they should just duke it out, and whoever wins, wins. But what you'll start to notice here is this is the beginnings of oppressor and oppressed. This is part of the whole trope of socialism and communism. you divide the nation and you weaken the economic activity and weaken the capitalists. And eventually you start pushing in more social programs, more social programs. Now, how do you do that? By having a mindset within the electorate of oppressed and oppressor. And the start of that wedge is anti-Semitism. And it's happening right now. Now, I don't care if Israel falls or doesn't fall. It's up to them. I don't care if Palestine falls or doesn't fall. It's up to them. They need to fight. You don't deserve it if you lose. It's that simple. But what we need to worry about domestically is this oppressor and oppressed trope that the socialists are using. And it starts with anti-Semitism, but then it'll be white males, the whites, including the females, anyone that's not of color will be asking for services. Reparations will be talked about in the media. There's going to be a push for more because of the oppressor, man, the years of oppression, that there is systematic racism. And they're going to push this. That's what this is all about. Free Palestine, abolish ICE. Then when you have illegal immigrants coming to the United States, they're going to be demanding social services. They're illegal here, but they're going to be demanding social services. They're going to be demanding that they should have a better life and take from you because there's systemic inequality because of capitalism. That's what is happening here. People need to wake up. It starts with anti-Semitism and it ends in tyranny.
Organize your union and join DSA.
DSA. Well, wait a minute. DSA, Democratic Socialists, I guess, of America. Maybe that's what the A stands for. Maybe association. I don't know. I don't really care. But wait a minute here. This is sounding a whole lot like the Nazi Party. And Hitler was a socialist.
Here today is a reimagining of an era of taking a chicken and packing a chicken. The chicken is over.
Outside of the Big Apple, South Carolina State Attorney General Alan Wilson will become the Republican nominee for governor. President Trump initially endorsed Wilson's opponent, Lieutenant Governor Pamela Abbott, and she did finish first in the primary election. The president then decided to endorse Wilson and Abbott in the runoff.
I believe you recognize what we've been doing for the last 10 years to support the things he was trying to accomplish with his administration. But also, I think you saw the fight in our campaign, the energy in our campaign. And I think he likes a fighter, and I think that's what won him over. Well, thank you, Mr. President.
And in Utah, former Congressman Ben McAdams is on track to return to Congress after winning the Democratic primary in the 1st Congressional District. He beat several progressives through the process, including one backed by Senator Bernie Sanders. All
right, what a night. Matt Rivera, live for us. Maddie, thank you so much. All right, staying on this very topic, New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani propelling 3 New York primary candidates into the midterms, giving the progressive wing of the Democrat Party a major boost.
This is your victory. What you
Hot for heavy shirts? Shirt Up with child clearance linen shirts. Perfect for big.
This is your victory. What you all have shown this evening, whether for state assembly, state senate, or Congress, is that a year ago, it was not the end of a political movement. It was the beginning. And let's hear it for our politics.
Now, think about what this means. what the DSA mean, what this new politic, this beginning of a movement, what it really means. It means an erosion of your constitutional freedoms. It means an erosion of the Enlightenment, because it's aligned with, philosophically, with relativism. And it is aligned with this idea of eroding God, country, and family. Now, people need to wake up. The DSA, the Democratic Socialist Party, what Mondami's pushing is communism. And we need to get on the battlefield and hold the line.
They will never forget working people. Politics that is ready to write a new chapter in our party's history.
Conservative Partnership Institute Vice President Rachel Bovar joins me now. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us. It happened last night. And all these socialist candidates believe in Medicare for all. They believe in abolishing ICE. They believe that Israel is committing genocide in the Middle East. And one of them, Daria Lisa Avila Chevalier, once posted on Twitter that she forgot napkins, so she wiped her hands on the American flag, and she and the others are poised to be sitting members of Congress. What is your reaction to this, and why?
I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's a true statement. If she really wiped her face or her hands with the American flag. If she did, that is disgusting. It is absolutely unacceptable for someone to desecrate the American flag. Period. Even if you hate America and all this stuff, it is just wrong. It's just so inconsiderate. If you have this idea that you could do that, then there's something mentally wrong with you. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. All those people that died for this country, all the people that have sacrificed to protect our freedoms. And again, it goes back to, if you can't protect it, you don't deserve it. And then you have some snot-nosed Democratic socialist desecrating the flag. Unacceptable. This is what I mean. Eroding God, country, and family. Dr. Paul Cottrell is 100% right on this. The Democratic Socialist Party needs to be abolished, needs to be truncated, needs to be destroyed.
Well, there's no getting around it that this was a very good night for the DSA, for the Democrat Socialists of America. And I think what should concern everyone is that this is a growing movement. Remember, the DSA has grown 10% in membership since February. They have been chalking up wins at the local and county level in red states like Arizona, Kansas, Iowa. So these congressional seats are simply the next step in the process of them consolidating power and becoming less of a fringe movement on the left than moving towards becoming what is now the establishment Democratic Party. As you mentioned, people with extreme views are now going to be sitting in the United States Congress. And it's not just, you saw the DSA update its policy playbook just earlier this month. They now want to abolish the Senate. They want to abolish the Supreme Court and the presidency and make it all subject to Congress. In addition to a whole...
See? They want to destroy the country. They don't believe in balance of power. They don't believe in our constitutional republic. This is what I've been saying for 2 years. The Democratic Socialist Party is communist. They want to destroy America. So if you have a friend that's a Democratic Socialist, you need to tell them to fuck off. If you have a family member that's a Democratic Socialist, you need to tell them to fuck off. If you have a coworker that's a Democratic Socialist, you need to tell them that it's about saving this country and that the Democratic Socialist Party needs to be destroyed.
Other things that they've talked about for years, like borders aren't real and all of these crazy proposals. So I do think this is something that can't be ignored. It can't be laughed away.
Mayor Mamdani can rightly, at least after tonight, claim the right as kingmaker of the left. And for establishment Democrats, you break it, you bought it. They had time to push this movement into the fringe.
You know, here's the problem. Here's the problem. The Republican Party is not helping middle America. The Democrats that are centrist or slightly left, they've lost the ball too. Because they're not helping middle America. Too much infighting. And so what's happening is taking now there's a gap, a vacuum that has been created of power, and the Democratic Socialists of America are taking on it. This is very similar to Nazism. If you really pay attention to what happened in the 1920s in Germany, this is very similar. Oh, no, they're not fascist. Listen, this has happened before. Now, the Republicans and the Democrats that are centrist have made this problem. They need to fix it. And they need to actually push back. Do we want communism or do we want capitalism? Do we want a constitutional republic or not? Do we want to be aligned with the Enlightenment or aligned with postmodernism where anything goes? It's all relative. And so what happened in New York, you had a bunch of snot-nosed kids that wanted to be in a city that they can't afford, programmed at universities with socialism, and you had a bunch of liberal Jews pushing this bullshit.
The time to say no to it was when they said borders aren't real and America is racist and Israel and the Jewish people are the source of every problem in America. They did not do that. So now Hakeem Jeffries, the leader of the Democratic Party in Congress, is going to have to deal with these people who now represent, in many ways, the face of his party.
Yeah, and a lot of people say what happened last night, it took place in New York City, no surprise there, but these three candidates that win, they give the socialist movement more messaging, more power there when they get to Congress. They're going to have committee assignments and just become overall more visible. And it sounds like what you're saying is with these three races and the local elections that are taking place that aren't getting as much attention, that there is a real movement here that could impact politics on a national scale.
That's exactly right. I don't think, for a long time, we've shrugged and said, well, it's just New York, it's just these blue states. As I mentioned, we now have Democrat socialists, elected officials sitting in red states like Arizona, even in Texas, in Iowa, in Kansas. These are county seats, these are local elections. And what happens after that are these federal elections, are these federal seats. You just saw a Democrat socialist candidate win the Democratic primary in Maine's 2nd district, which is a district that Donald Trump won by 10 points. And they are making inroads in, all across the country. So I do think this is something that the Republican Party, the institutional right, needs to grapple with. The left should have done it a long time ago, but now this is who they are. And I think that the establishment Democrats are going to have a hard time controlling them. Hakeem Jeffries has a lot to deal with because these are not members of Congress who are going to be deferential to the establishment Democrat way of doing things. They're going to get on committees. They're going to do what they want. So buckle up, Democrats, because there's a lot coming at you.
Well, Democrat Mamdani said that the Democratic Party needed change, and last night that is certainly what happened. We'll see how that change translates when it comes to all of us in the national conversation. Rachel, thank you so much.
This is 1980. This is Animal Farm, where you're going to have Napoleon the pig taking your property away and living high on the hog. No pun intended. Now, we also have to pay attention to, if you don't believe in what they have to say, then they're going to try to take away your freedom. So it's also kind of like 1984. They're going to be watching you. They want freedom of speech, but only their speech. They want people to to be inclusive and to be open to new ideas as long as it's their ideas. You better step up, hold the line, and maintain our constitutional freedoms. If not, you're going to lose them. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the probiotics. You can get it in powdered version or the veggie cap version. With a good probiotic, you're going to be able to sleep better. You're going to also notice your skin will improve. With a good gut biome, you're absorbing your nutrients. You're going to have a steadier amount of energy. You're improving your gut biome and improving that immune system, keeping the inflammation down. That's really important. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the probiotics, either the veggie cap version or the powdered version. I prefer the powdered version, but either of them will give you the high quality probiotics that you need. Digestive enzyme complex reduces the load on your pancreas. And by doing that, you're going to be able to absorb your carbohydrates, proteins, and lipids easier. Digestive enzyme complex has the enzymes that will help to break up your food. Reduce the load on your pancreas. Once you turn about age 40, your pancreas doesn't perform as well, no matter how healthy you are, right? So what you want to do is get the digestive enzyme complex, take it when you're eating, help to digest. Now, digestive enzyme complex also has bromelain. Bromelain will help to break up clots. So it'll also help with cardiovascular health. Now, but the digestive enzyme complex also has the proteolytic enzymes in it to break up glycoproteins, which is super important during the cold season. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, you get $5 off. Take my advice, get the probiotics, get the digestive enzyme complex, help with your gut biome, and help with the health of your pancreas. Crazy. It's absolutely crazy with these liberals. All right, let's listen to more to Joe about the New York primaries.
Okay, I want to talk about this book that I just found. I'm obsessed with this book. Is it a book? It's so much more. It can be used if
They're going to look at New York City and go, oh, the Democratic Party is so far left. I actually saw one guy who's fairly respected have the nerve to say, oh, well, this just proves that if you're in the Democratic Party, you have to be crazy to win. I'm thinking, wait, this from Trump's MAGA Republican Party? But, you know, they're going to focus on New York City, and they're going to ignore the admiral winning in South Carolina, a woman who's committed her entire life to protecting and defending the United States of America. They're also going to ignore a woman just up the road that's going to be running against Mike Lawler, who was a Bronze Star 3-time, was awarded the Bronze Star 3 times. She was special ops, one of the first women to ever lead special ops units. She toured Afghanistan and Iraq, had 6 tours there. A bona fide war hero. And this is, I gotta say, this is what the Democrats are proving themselves really to be really pragmatic. If you look at what they did last night, New York City, they go far left. That'll work for New York City. In places like Lawler's district, which is a swing district, South Carolina, one swing district, finding these military heroes, much like they did with the
Joe, DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, want to abolish our balance of powers. Now, I believe you're a lawyer, and I think you have been taught what our Constitution really means. And this constitutional republic that we have, they want to abolish it. So why are we putting up candidates through the primary process that want to actually abolish our system of government? It seems doesn't seem very pragmatic. What about how the Democratic Socialists don't believe in the Enlightenment? They're not aligned with the Enlightenment. They're not aligned with God, country, and family. They want to abort more fetuses. They want to kill more fetuses. They want to destroy religion. They want to demonize people and put them in two different categories. You're either oppressed or you're an oppressor. And if you're an oppressor, we're going to take from you. We're going to erode your property rights. We're going to erode the Constitution. We're going to erode what John Locke said about life, liberty, and property rights. We're going to erode all that. We're going to take away your life. We're going to take away your liberties. And we're going to take away your property. That's what the democratic socialists are. But let's see if Morning Joe steps up to the plate and protects the country.
Jersey race, Mikey Sherrill. And in Virginia, Spanberger, while they were electing a socialist in New York City, Mamdani. It worked then. We'll see if it works this fall.
Yeah, these are congressional races. These are not statewide races. So it's not terribly surprising that someone to the far left won the Upper West Side or won areas of Brooklyn. It is impressive that Mayor Mamdani, in his short term in office, was able to sort of bless these candidates, and some of them winning overwhelmingly and unseating incumbents. Dan Goldman losing by 30 points in his district. The incumbent and Congressman Espiat, who is a major figure in congressional Hispanic caucus, the leader of that caucus as well, he was unseated in a closer race there. So yes, as the New York Times says this morning, Mamdani showed he can be a kingmaker, but to make this a national story and not look at what you just discussed, which is the race up in Westchester County, where Mike Lawler is going to have a tough fight because a lot of the support he's shown for Donald Trump, and in South Carolina and other places where it turns out, Jonathan Lemire, in specific congressional districts, Democrats pick candidates that they think can win. In this case, in New York City, some of those were socialists.
Yeah, and Democrats feel good in recent cycles since the 24 disaster about finding the right candidates for the right races. I was talking to some Democrats yesterday who reminded us, as we look towards this November, the success that Democrats had running moderates for the governor's races in New Jersey and Virginia. They won both. But yet, and we're seeing the same there in South Carolina. They feel very bullish about a lot of races coming up this fall. But yes, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. And in New York City, certainly that's the story here, is Zohran Mamdani, in his early days in office, having significant coattails, being a kingmaker and picking off, and choosing, Joe, to use his political capital to pick off some incumbents to put in some of his sort of more like-minded fellow travelers, more to the left, than others. I mean, Dan Goldman has a record that a lot of Democrats are pretty happy with the exception of some of the support for Israel in the months after the war. And also, there's also here in New York, there's sort of the Latino political machine also showing its age. I think that's part of it as well. It's a subplot to what happened here. But no doubt, what worked in New York City, Democrats aren't trying to replicate it other places. It's not one size fits all.
Yeah,
it turns out the government tracks a lot of data. It's scattered all over the place. Data on prices. Job.
Yeah, a lot of things going on here. And Jonathan, we're going to have you put on your daily news hat here. I personally thought when Mamdani came out and endorsed all these people, I thought too soon. Because even if you win in those cases, and he did, and he should be saluted, it's an extraordinary political machine there, and he's going to build a lot of power as a kingmaker in New York City. A lot of scar tissue when you're mayor of New York City with a lot of people, even if you win those races. But he's proven himself to be a brilliant political operator. I'm sure he'll sort through that. I just hearing a lot of people talking about the anti-Semitism in New York City, and last night proved the anti-Semitism in New York City, and this is Mamdani's fault, this is so-and-so's fault, this is this left. No, it's not. It's really not. If you want to blame anybody for what happened last night, in my opinion, if you want to blame anybody, Jonathan, I think you have to blame Benjamin Netanyahu. 4 years of maximalist aims, 4 years of ahistoric goals in the Middle East. Did anybody, from Dr. Brzezinski to even me, could have told anybody over the past 20 years, It's not going to work. And I've said it all along. There's always blowback in the Middle East. The idea that you're going to be able to brutalize children and women in Gaza with bombing that looks indiscriminate on TV day in and day out for years, that you're going to be able to level half of Lebanon, that you're going to be able to continue to allow thugs to run wild in the West Bank and brutalizing Palestinians, brutalizing Christians in Bethlehem, brutalizing Christians across that area, along with Palestinian Muslims, especially Palestinian Muslims.
It's not the main issue that's bringing the DSA up into political power. It's not the issue with Israel and Palestine. It's money. It's affordability. It's the worry that people have about their employment and their living standards. Now, there's a sub-theme where they're tied into this whole oppressor and oppressed issue in the Middle East. But that's not the bulk of the reason. The bulk of the reason is affordability. It's money.
Blowing up Catholic churches in Gaza. Of course, I'm saying things that would relate to some of these people who are so shocked that Israel is in such low standing in America right now. Forgive me for a quick digression, but I was always instinctively pro-Israeli and anti-Palestinian growing up. You know why? Because when I was a young child, one of my first memories was the '72 Munich Olympics, when Palestinian terrorists killed Israelis, and it was shocking. And we saw time and time again terror attacks throughout the '70s. That shaped an entire generation's views on that conflict. Well, what's shaping the views now? Images out of Gaza, images out of the West Bank, images out of Lebanon, a famine out of Gaza, and an American president who tells Netanyahu, go. Young restraint until his war in Iran goes horribly wrong. So you can blame all of this on Benjamin Netanyahu. And yes, if you go back to the horrors of October 7th, blame the funding for that on Benjamin Netanyahu as well, because he forced it.
He's not paying attention. This is multivariable on why this is happening. And a big part of it is finances and cost of living, the instability perceived or actualized of their job prospects. That's why it's happening. And this is what's galvanizing the youth. The youth are having a hard time getting good paying jobs. So if they feel that they can't afford life, they can't afford rent or buy a home or get a good job or pay for the loans for their schooling. If they can't do that, of course they're going to align with the Democratic Socialists, because the Democratic Socialists tell you that they'll do everything for you, even though everything gets more expensive and they can't provide. But no one wants to pay attention to history because socialism never works. But more than Joe doesn't want to say that. He just wants to demonize Netanyahu. Even though Netanyahu should be demonized, I think Netanyahu should be in prison. But that situation in the Middle East, it's whoever wins. It's the law of the jungle. The United States should not be helping. We should not be paying for it. If they want to purchase weapons, fine. If they want to purchase weapons from us or from Germany or from France, whatever, I don't really care. The United States should get out of this. Our financial contributions to the region should be pulled. We should not be funding the Palestinians. We should not be funding Israel. And just let them, whoever wins, wins.
Parties to continue funding Hamas. weeks before the October 7th attack. So again, everybody's going to want to blame somebody else for this. The guy on the left is the reason why Israel's standing, not only in New York City, but across America, is lower than it has been since 1948. And you're starting to see that in elections, not only on the far left, but on the far right.
Yeah, what you just said there about Netanyahu being the central figure is precisely what I was texting with some New York Democratic operatives last night. First of all, the people on the right like to blame Mamdani. They like to say there's a culture of anti-Semitism here. People can have their own opinions. That's not what this was about. Brad Lander, of course, Jewish himself. This is about the support for Israel and the conduct of that war. Dan Goldman, this shows you how toxic it is. Dan Goldman, as of late 2024, was also running away from it, since denounced it and said this has gone too far, tried to move away from his position that had initially been supportive. But that shows you just how toxic Bibi and Netanyahu and his conduct of the war has been, where he couldn't overcome that. And Lander, who had been far more critical, was able to win. So that is a big piece of the story here in New York. And then the Mamdani coattails is the other element here. There's no question that the Netanyahu stuff, Joe and Mika, loomed large in that race, perhaps more than any other factor. And we'll see how that plays out going forward, because as a final thought, I had conversations last night with some Democrats about other races coming up this fall and in 2028. And there's no doubt that the Netanyahu stuff looms large. As long as he's in power, once he's out, that could change things. But the conduct of that war in Gaza is going to be a fundamental issue for Democrats for years to come.
How to find the right car for you. Go to cars.com. Look at the car you like. Ciao.
Ciao.
Find your next one.
Ciao. All right. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and help support capitalism. But if you do what I tell you to do in terms of improving your health and wellness, you're going to notice that you're slowing down the aging process and getting healthy. Gladiator barley. This will help to detoxify your body, soak up free radicals, and bring down inflammation. That's super important. That helps with your immune system, your endocrine system, your joint health, your cardiovascular system, and brain function. A lot of people don't realize that if you soak up those free radicals and keep that inflammation down, you are supporting your brain function, because you're keeping that inflammation down and preventing the misfolding of proteins, preventing amyloidosis, and reducing the chances of dementia. Keeping inflammation down, soaking up those free radicals, and your tissues will perform better. So take my advice, get the Gladiator barley, do some resistance training. This will also help to build muscle. And by building muscle, you're producing not just muscle mass and bone density, but you're also going to get better posture. You're going to be able to move around more. You're producing higher concentrations of myokines and BDNF, and those protect neurons. There's a correlation between healthy muscle mass and brain function. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Gladiator barley. Now you can also get the heirloom barley. This will help to detoxify your body, soak up free radicals, bring down inflammation, help with the immune system and the endocrine system, the cardiovascular system, brain function, the joint health, but it doesn't help with building muscle. So if you want to build muscle and detox, bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals, you will want to get the Gladiator barley. You'll also notice that you'll be able to control your A1C. The markets are open. You'll be able to control your A1C levels, especially when you build more muscle mass. Now, I have a supplement called Myotrol. Myotrol will help with the gene expression to build muscle. It has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to help with that gene expression. Once you turn about age 40, because of methylation of your genes, you can't express certain genes as much as when you were younger. So if you want youthful gene expression of musculature, you want to take Myotrol. Now, Myotrol will also help the health of mitochondria, so you'll have more energy. the mitochondria will produce more ATP. You'll be able to maintain that muscle. So do some resistance training. Make sure you do back exercises and build back muscles. Very important to help with the posture, help with lymphatic flow, help with venous return flow. And again, by building more muscle, you're helping with brain function. Why? Because you're increasing the concentrations of myokines and BDNF. Those are neuroprotective. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Myotrol and stack it with the Gladiator Barlow. Do some resistance training. You don't have to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. But the idea of slowing down the aging process and having more vitality and longevity is to learn from geriatric medicine and sports medicine. If you take those lessons learned and stack them with certain types of supplementation, certain types of lifestyle changes, when you do this holistically, you are slowing down the aging process. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right, let's listen into Microsoft CEO here about AI.
People keep asking, how do we actually get an AI agent on our team? Well, it's easy. Watch how I do it in 60 seconds on Monday. First, tell Monday what you need.
Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella is one of the architects of the AI boom, but now he's calling out the companies that are leading it. Nadella is warning that AI power is growing more and more concentrated, and big tech must earn the public's trust, telling the Wall Street Journal that companies have to watch messaging and avoid doom forecasts on AI safety and job losses. The Microsoft CEO is advocating for cheaper and user-controlled AI, also to steer away from a future dictated by frontier models. Jessica, the irony is not lost on me that he is one of the giants in technology that is paving the way to a certain degree. So, your thoughts on what his messaging here is, because it's one thing to scold, but you're sort of part of the group that's leading the way as it is right now.
Yeah, well, I see he's saying a couple things, and he's alluding to an essay he wrote earlier in the month as well, so bringing it all together. But he's basically saying you can't say this doom and gloom that all white collar jobs are going to be gone with artificial intelligence. And then in the same breath, also state we need all of these data centers and those are going to help bring jobs, but this is also a mass weapon as well. Then justify all the spending that they're doing in artificial intelligence if it's not going to ultimately help the economy in the long run. That's a component of it. So moving to open source and utilizing other aspects, I think that's where he's getting at. But what I love is his parallels that he is driving to deglobalization that happened in the 90s. So a lot of offshoring happened. And on the surface level, GDP looked absolutely fine. But because there was offshoring, we were losing our skills that you pass on through labor, through your managers and things of that nature. And this learning loop or the loss of knowledge work is what he's concerned of. And I agree with this point. When you are a big enterprise, for example, if you're not utilizing your own data and you're not building on a model, you're utilizing somebody else's model, you're feeding in your data into that model to only improve it, thus losing the knowledge work. So the same thing, drawing parallels, maybe not exactly the same, but losing that knowledge work that was from in our internal infrastructure.
This is the reason why you need to hire people to learn the trade, learn the business. Get experience. Don't jump on this whole AI bandwagon. Most people don't need it.
That took years to overcome. Doing that with artificial intelligence in large language models could be detrimental for the workforce in the longer run. This is a longer, definitely longer term play, but you are right. It plays to him and his advantage because of his competitor.
Kind of like a Dr. Evil moment where he's sitting back and he's saying, Brian, to the rest of the community of AI, which is if we need to fix we need to fix our messaging strategy. We need to fix this because people are getting so scared of this that they don't want to let us rule the world. And so, everybody's got to dial it back.
guess so, but it still feels like he's talking his book here, right? Because didn't they just like do a deal with DeepSeek or something?
They're thinking about using DeepSeek as a co-pilot.
So like
so
he's saying we got to have these like cheat models. Just so happens that's the route they're going down. So that here's my thing. These guys are all smart. They're all smarter than me. But I'm tired of them trying to be thought leaders, telling me about the future. Okay, like they've invented something. It's great. It's going to change the world. I'm convinced of that. I don't think they know how, and they all have their own incentives to push it one way or the other, to get in cozy with the government over here or to get in cozy with the government over here. And I'm kind of tired of it. I think they're all influence buying and seeking for their own competitive advantage. And I don't care if it's AI, I don't care if it's trucking, I don't care if you sell bananas. I don't like people doing that. And I think we ought to draw a clear line between government decision makers and these guys, because it's getting awfully fuzzy. And I think the losers in all that are the taxpayers and the American people who watch their money and influence go to these guys.
Satya is calling out, and Microsoft has put money in OpenAI and Anthropic, and he's by talking about you can't say, hey, all the white collar jobs are gone and this could be a weapon and we're going to use all your power to build data centers. He's calling out Anthropic and Google and OpenAI. And in fact, Microsoft is in the hosting and infrastructure business. And Microsoft just kind of wants to host everybody. OpenAI is not the shoe-in to win this tech race. And Microsoft under Nadella's leadership realizes you don't need to fund all of these large language models themselves to be part of this AI future. So he is looking at the big picture of where this tech in the big sense goes. And Nadella looked at how fast this tech was changing and growing, and looked at how much money OpenAI and Anthropic are spending on it, and said, yeah, nah, we don't, why make such a huge bet when we don't have to, that we can just essentially host this tech and be in the infrastructure business. We don't need to walk down the road or run down the road that the LLM creators are doing. And he said something similar last December about we need to earn the social permission to consume energy. He's trying to guide them, basically telling Dario Amodei, stop telling us that your stuff's dangerous.
Every layer of this AI chain, kind of supply chain of AI, has a different message. So I think about Jensen Huang's been very vocal, in his speeches, Satya Nadella, but they're all going about it from the way that it benefits them.
Yes.
And
they are. You know what I was Yeah. No one said anything when we offshored all of our blue collar jobs to China. I am a firm believer that AI will create more jobs than it will destroy. But if there are some white collar jobs that get destroyed, are all these people, are we going to feel sorry for them? Because no one felt sorry for the blue collar jobs that were lost in small rural towns when we shipped them to China in the sake of profit. So I just want to make sure it's fair on both sides. I'm not really going to cry for the white collar jobs because blue collar had to go through the 90s. Just the circle.
AI actually will be a greater
net add. I needed 10 sequin cowboy hats for a bachelorette party. But what did I get? What the? But then everything was just resolved. Return label in my email. Order tracked. Thanks to nice net add.
Boom for people like the folks I grew up with who were destroyed by the offshore.
It's in the data, and I'm ready to see it.
Well, I see people now using AI where I grew up, like the people who don't have a choice but say to try to run their family's farms because their jobs were destroyed by Walmart and Sam's Club.
On that note,
Yeah.
should we talk about another deal? This is with Microsoft that they're powering with Chevron for a 20-year power purchase agreement to build a $7 billion nat gas AI data center in the West Texas campus. This is one of the largest collaborations that we've seen between a hyperscaler and big oil. But what's interesting about this, and I think that they need to talk about this more, I need to be hearing more about this. They're totally bypassing the public Texas ERCOT grid. Everything is going to be self-isolating between Chevron and Microsoft, so not drawing on ERCOT. But then the good thing is you don't then get the rolling blackouts that sometimes come with the power grid. Remember when there was a big freeze and the power went out? So it can work both ways, but they should be talking about this. Hey, we're building a data center, but we are not even touching your grid. We're building our own thing. That I think would go a long way in terms of the social construct of how we think about AI data centers.
They're building a $7 billion data center, and they're saying we can't let the AI giants eat the economy. The guy's building a $7 billion data center saying that.
He's the AI giant.
Okay.
I know.
I just like that's.
It's not lost on us, the irony.
No, he means the other jolly.
The other giant.
The other jolly.
I know, but like I'm building a $7 billion data center, but they're the giants.
No, the other jolly green Joes and Jills.
Okay.
Okay.
I think it's the knowledge
too. No, I really do. Eating the economy, as in you're putting in all of your knowledge, and all of a sudden these giants own every bit of data. That is bad. That's
Yeah, I was thinking about my conversations with AI the other day and the log that must be, because I've been really getting into it, dig in, but then you give more detail with respect to whatever you're
And
asking
now you
about.
sound like Bernie Sanders, where he says you collectively built AI, so therefore you deserve 50% of the company.
No, I didn't say that. I just said I don't want to give them more data.
You have to be somebody else briefly and talking to your preferred LLM.
Right.
So you got to shake things up, like in a relationship.
Okay.
Wait, but not like in a relationship.
Point taken.
By the way, Brett wasn't bad yesterday, as you mentioned.
No, I mean, like it was bad in that we declined only on a few stocks.
Yeah, no, I mean that's to your point. Yesterday we had, I think, almost 300 stocks up and 200 down, and yet the S&P was off 1.4%. So really interesting. Look, coming up, Bloomberg Intelligence sees Micron revenue and guidance beating expectations by more than 10% each. The analysts behind that call joined us next. This is Bloomberg Open Interest.
This is the future of performance. It moves, it evolves, it never settles. At Equinox.
Price of crude oil this morning dropping yet again. WTI this morning is down by about 2% to 71.79. Brent is trading at 75.55. Joining us right now with more on the energy markets is Daniel Yergin. He is S&P Global's vice chairman. And Dan, let's talk this through. We have watched energy prices drop incredibly quickly. We have not seen the prices drop quite as quickly at the pump. Why don't you talk a little bit about what we're seeing right now with WTI, what you expect to see in the next few months?
Well, I think that obviously crude prices have come down because of the ability of ships to get out of the Gulf. But at this point, we see traffic at about 25% of normal. But expectation of more and Iranian oil coming out to the market. So the confidence is there, although we do see that gasoline supplies, inventories get tight as we get into the summer of July. Gasoline prices have come down a lot, about 60 cents from where they were. But as always happens, gasoline prices come down a little more slowly than the crude prices.
How long should we anticipate gasoline prices remaining at these levels? What's the situation as we get into the summertime with gasoline refinery And then how do you kind of put that in context with what we've heard from the president overnight, where he's a little frustrated that prices haven't come down more quickly?
Yeah, well, I think that, when I look at it, it does seem to come down pretty quickly, but the pattern is that they always take longer. I'll tell you though, when we look at the inventory levels of gasoline, they are quite low. They're really around historic lows, and they look like they'll continue to get lower. We've been exporting gasoline, and so that's that's a factor. And that's what people see at the pump. But in terms of sort of gouging, these familiar terms we've heard over the years, the first charge of gouging that I came across when I was writing the prize was in 1923 congressional hearings, and prices then dropped more. And as crude prices come down, these gasoline prices will come down as well. But still, at this point, the transit through the Strait of Hormuz is still only about the level of 25% of what has been normal.
I guess the reason that WTI and Brent prices have come down so quickly is that nobody wants to get caught in a situation where you are holding something very long and then shipping gets back to normal. What would you anticipate? What would you expect? How long do you think it would take to get back to normal at this point?
Well, I don't think we're ever going to be back to normal as we've had it in the past, because there's a question of who controls the Strait of Hormuz. And the president has said that Iran can't charge tolls. Iran has said we'll have a Persian Gulf Strait Authority and a Persian Gulf Insurance Company, and we'll have charges which they may or may not cause tolls. And so I think there's actually a pervasive anxiety among shippers about the degree to which Iran will actually have a say, will control the strait. And that's still to be worked out. And even if you look at the language, the 14-point memorandum, there's ambiguity about charges. And the Iranians may say, well, we're just putting fees on, they're not tolls. But the rest of the world will look at it as tolls. And that is something that is very troubling to the shipping industry and to the global oil industry.
Do you think that sticks? I mean, I look at that as noise at this point, but do you think, and does the shipping industry think that sticks?
Well, that's what we're going to see play out. That Iran is very clear that it intends to have fees that they will charge, and in a sense, a creeping nationalization. Certainly, the Arab Gulf countries will absolutely not want to accept that, and the world won't accept that. And that will be playing out over the next few months. But Iran has discovered that it can control, become a regulator of the world oil market by controlling the strait.
But where do you think oil prices should be now and over the next few months? Is a range of $60 to $75 what you're thinking? 70 to 85? What's your expectation?
Well, I think at this point it would seem, based upon, there's a lot that we don't know about how these negotiations are going to end up, but 70 to 85, we're not back to where we were at the beginning of the year when it was expected there was going to be a huge glut of oil and prices, were in the low 60s. So with all the insecurity, it seems 70 to 85 seems a reasonable range unless something dramatically changes.
You've said that even when the strait reopens, it will take a while to get back to normal. What do you mean by that? Walk us through that process.
Well, first of all, shippers, I've talked to shippers. Some are, rushing to get their tankers back in. Others are holding back because they don't know what's going to happen. They don't want their tankers to be stuck there again. You've got to move the shipping. You have 1,000 ships, something like that need to get out of the Gulf. Then you need to get tankers in, pick up oil. Production has to be started. And there's a degree of bringing production back and to previous levels and dealing with the damage. And how extensive is still to be ascertained along the Gulf, given the amount of missiles and drones that pounded the Arab parts of the country. What is new is that there's no limits on Iranian oil now. As much oil that the Iranians can get out, they will get out. And I think that's one of the factors that's also weighing on the price.
This is about Amazon.
Amazon's Prime Day event kicking off, and Fox Business is getting an inside look at how AI-powered robots are transforming the company's operations. Lauren Simney is at an Amazon robotics lab in Massachusetts with more. Hey, Lauren.
Dagan, I am at the robotics lab where Amazon designs and builds every single robot it uses in its warehouses worldwide. Okay, this is Sparrow. It's heavy. It has 7 fingers here that can attach to and move 80% of the items that Amazon sells. I say 80% because it doesn't have a thumb yet, so we're stuck at 80%, not at 100 yet. What this does, it attaches to that yellow elephant trunk looking arm over there and uses AI machine vision to identify the object, suction it up, and then sort it into the appropriate bin. Other autonomous bots like Proteus scan the warehouse floors, carrying 900 pounds on their backs, taking items to delivery docks to go onto the trucks. In all, Amazon employs 1 million robots like these and is investing $1 billion in its employees to upskill them to manage the bots. Listen.
We have over 700,000 people that we have upskilled since we've started focusing on our robots. And that allows our employees to evolve their skill set to complement the advancement of technology.
They need maintenance like your car does. They need technicians like you would for your car. It helps them train and develop the job skills they need to fix robots and get them back into the fleet.
And one of the employees that we spoke to guys said he quadrupled his salary by going through that training. So what kind of feels like robot mayhem, the robots are taking over, is really very organized. It's a machine that uses AI on Prime Day to help you find the item that you want to order, actually buy it, and then they use AI and robots to get that item to your doorstep, sometimes in minutes. Back to you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Lauren from Westboro, Massachusetts. Who wants it? Because I'm just going to sit here and complain about it.
I'll take the opposite. I love it. I love that they're incorporating technology and showing how their employees can use it and get raises because of it if they're using it. Plus, I mean, those things are pretty cool. I saw an automated garage. This is a little bit not on Amazon, but on technology. They were moving all of the cars up and over to get it out of the garage. Totally like no one was doing it. They were just moving all these platforms. Incredible engineering, and I love it.
Amazon also is expected to cash in big this Prime week. One projection says that shoppers are going to dish out $26 billion, up 9% from a year ago. Retail rivals want a piece. Walmart, Target, others slashing prices, rolling out dealios of their own to compete for customers.
Can I get in here?
Yeah.
So the 26 billion is projected up 9% from last year. And this is the thing, when we talk about consumer sentiment and consumer sentiment numbers not being great, and I'm pointing to Brian because he's on the same page with me here, I don't trust those estimates because of the people and the moods that they're in when they happen to get surveyed. I look at this and say, Prime Day is coming and people are spending. And those other retailers want to get in on the action and they'll probably be discounting too. And corporate earnings have been strong. So when you see this all flowing down to the bottom line, that tells me the consumer is very much alive and well. And again, back to your Meta glasses, was it? Yeah, for $2.99. Yes. Right. You know, you're complaining about gas prices and inflation on one hand, although the same people complaining about it were never saying anything when inflation was 9% under Joe Biden. But somebody's going out and buying all this stuff. You know, the narrative within the media doesn't make sense based on the numbers.
Yeah, we use the Jackie method for Prime Day.
Right. Oh, you put stuff in your cart.
Put some bistro chairs.
Ooh.
In the cart, a bronze colored bistro
From Minnesota?
Yes, to see if we would get a deal on Prime Day. And as far as I can tell, I'm not good at this, I think we have a deal.
Nice.
Ooh, I got a deal on a 24-pack of crayons.
But Oh, Dred, that's a big purchase for
Yeah.
you, 24 pack of crayons.
Well, I thought it was $5.
This goes to show two things on sentiment. A lot of those surveys on consumer sentiment, look how they model it.
Yeah.
Very heavy Democrats.
Yeah.
No surprise.
Exactly.
And in terms of shopping, yes, people look for bargains. Sam Walton, you can see it out in Bentonville. Yeah, they got him in a holograph. He says, I'd buy something for 80 and sell it for 120. That's nice. But if I charge only 100 or 90, I'll sell more and make more. And so volume, gin that up. And by the way, it's like cutting taxes, lower the rates, you get more.
Oh, Steve, you always got to sneak that. Can I just add one thing? I think, people can debate like big retailers, they like and so forth. But one thing about the World Cup is all these people have come here and they're all infatuated by our abundance. Like how many things you can get in one place and the variety and the choice. I just think that's interesting because we take that for granted. We walk into a big store and it's like, I've got 75 different deodorants, which Bernie Sanders famously didn't like. But actually the rest of the world comes here and says, that's incredible. I can't believe.
Well, you hit on something very important that the economic statistics don't get. And that is our standard of living is far higher than it is in Europe. A typical house here, what you can buy here, far better than what you get in Europe. So let the Eurocentrics say, oh, we've got it great over there. All right, stay there. But those who come here, wow, this is pretty nice.
Yeah.
And they're getting us to exercise again.
Rowing. That's good for you. It's good. Do it.
When Lauren was doing that hit, somebody texted me and said, ask about the automation that Amazon uses to track its workers. If you're working on the line, they track every movement in terms of it's called time off task. When a worker scans an item, a timer starts counting and tracking the seconds until you pick up or stow the next item. That basically you're being spied on constantly if you work.
That goes back to 120 years with the
Taylorism.
When we're trying to do these motions showing how you make your factory more efficient. By the way, on robots, I have a son-in-law has to go to San Francisco a lot. He takes a taxi, driverless taxi every time. It works. I mean, we see him on video and say, what? And it's going to get better. And by the way, the ultimate robot will be able to change diapers. Good news for you.
Walk the dog.
And walk the dog and be able to get patients out of a hospital bed seamlessly.
Love
There
it.
you go.
Love it.
I'm not anti-automation or innovation, but I sure as hell think about my parents who were put out of business by Walmart and Sam's Club.
With 7 Rooms, your website becomes a 24/7 digital sales tool, allowing you to promote events, private dining spaces, one-off experiences, and fill tables, even when canceling.
Welcome back. New York is headed to the polls for today's primary elections to choose their candidates for all.
One day later. There's a big issue in memory chips.
As we mentioned, it's been a volatile week for the semis, the SMH coming off that 7% drop. But the ETF still on pace for its best first half of trading ever since its inception back in 2000. Joining us to discuss if the rally can continue this morning, CJ Muse, semiconductor analyst over at Cantor Fitzgerald. CJ, welcome back. Good to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Where do you think we are in this cycle? And did Cerebrus tell us anything last night? What do you expect from Micron?
Yeah, I think a quarter ago, we saw great momentum in the group going into Micron's report, but then it was so great, the market, kind of was worried about the slowing second derivative and we sold off a bit. It wouldn't shock me if we had the same thing tonight with Micron, but I think the more important thing to think about for Micron, if you take a step back, is that the real takeaway for memory is that supply is going to be even tighter in 27 than 26. And so because of that, you can actually think about earnings growth in not only 27, but also 28. And, I think the bulls are thinking about $200 of earnings for Micron next calendar year. And if that's right, you're talking about a stock trading at 5 times. And, I don't think that's the right multiple, peak multiple for a name like Micron. So I do think there's more upside. And, if you look at compute multiples, memory multiples, there's still significant upside as long as you underwrite the demand for compute, not peaking in 28, but, extending into 29, 30 and beyond.
Wow. Yeah, that's definitely pushing the calendar forward. I am curious in some of your holds, Intel, Marvell, and Qualcomm. We've had news on all of them this week. There's some M&A on Qualcomm, Marvell, S&P, Journal with this Intel piece on engineering challenges. Is there a thread among those?
I'd say all three have performed extraordinarily well in the last 3 months. I think, from an Intel perspective, what we got wrong was that TSMC was wholeheartedly sold out. We thought more business would go to Samsung, but clearly it's also, gone to Intel. And I think, having a national champion in manufacturing makes a lot of sense. And so I understand kind of why we are here. For Marvell, I think the truth is that their business at Amazon and their coming business at Microsoft, coupled with their tremendous strength in optics, is driving much higher earnings power. You think about $10 into 2028. And so that's really driven this uplift. And then for Qualcomm, they announced 2 months ago on their earnings call that they were going to enter the data center market. They have an analyst day today. I would say that here I'm a little bit more suspect. I don't think it's easy to create a new business in the data center. It's a crowded market, like you discussed earlier. And this is not something where if you have wafers at TSMC, that's enough. You need to have a 5-10 year roadmap. And so I'd say it's really early in the life cycle for Qualcomm.
What do you make of this announcement from OpenAI and Broadcom about Jalapeno? I know it just crossed the tape, so I'm not sure if you have any initial thoughts on it and what it means for the competitive landscape.
Well, I like your other names. I'm thinking spicy tequila for the next one. But, I think that, they want to kind of control their destiny. It's very similar with what Google's doing with their GPU. It's similar with Amazon and training. And so I think this is a natural progression of wanting to build their own silicon. I think to the earlier comments, it's all about cost per token per watt. And for certain workloads, building your own custom silicon makes a lot of sense. But it doesn't offer the flexibility of a GPU. And so I would say that, this is a rising tide for compute demand that, will lift all boats. And, as long as we are tight in capacity, I think all of these companies are going to do well. But I think the key really is TSMC wafer allocation. And, all of our work suggests that they're prioritizing NVIDIA, AMD, and Broadcom. And so I think those are your three kind of winners on the custom silicon front.
What do you think a listing from SK Hynix means here? The potential to raise $29 billion. I'm assuming that could be added to your coverage list as well.
You have to be careful where we're on the deal. So there's not much I can say there. I would say that, not focused on Hynix, but, we are very bullish on the DRAM market. We do think that, supply and demand balance will first come in 29. And if that's right, then there's real upside here for group.
Electricity is the biggest energy theme in the 21st century.
We really are entering a new age. You need to balance supply and demand. We have correspondents in Washington and in Doha, but let's go straight to Rosalind Jordan, who is live for us at the White House. So, Rosalind, tell us more about what the president is saying and what this means in the context of this deal.
Well, a couple of hours ago, the U.S. President Donald Trump posted on his Truth Social platform, and I'm going to read from his post, quoting, Iran has informed the U.S. that despite troublemaking fake news reporting to the contrary, there are, quote, no tolls, no insurance costs, and no other charges of any kind being sought by or received by Iran on ships traveling through the Strait of Hormuz. If this is false information continuing, negotiations would end immediately. Additionally, no money has been given to Iran or released from their money to them by the U.S. We will be releasing some of their money that is totally controlled by us to U.S. farmers and ranchers for the purchase of corn, wheat, soybeans, and more. Food is desperately needed in Iran, and we will be purchasing it for them exclusively from the United States. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Very briefly, the U.S. President is reiterating one of the points that had been reached in the memorandum of understanding that at least for 60 days, Iran, which claims it has the right to impose tolls on commercial vessels, would not do so. Here is Donald Trump saying that this is not going to happen. And the administration has said in recent days it's not going to happen after the 60-day period of this negotiation is over to boot.
Okay, Rosalind, stay with us while we bring in Malik Traina, who's live for us here in Doha. Malik, the Strait of Hormuz is obviously very important economically to the countries in the Gulf region. How closely are they watching this back and forth about tolls and passage in the Strait of Hormuz?
Extremely closely, Riley. Gulf countries condemned Iran when they closed the Strait of Hormuz during the war. They said they didn't have the right to do so, whether on a legal or territorial perspective. The Strait of Hormuz is the main artery for Gulf countries to get their oil and gas supplies out to the global market. And gas and oil is the beating heart of the economies here. So when the Strait of Hormuz was closed by Iran, both countries had to cut off production. Sometimes for some countries suspend it completely because they didn't have the storage capacity to keep it here, and they couldn't send it out through the Strait of Hormuz. So they're going to be watching very closely for Gulf countries since the very beginning. They've called for the freedom of navigation. They've supported for their economies here, but we know now how important it is to the global markets.
Let's go back to Rosalind Jordan, who's at the White House for us. So, Rosalind, the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is currently on a tour of the Gulf. What's his message for the allies in this region?
Well, the Secretary of State and National Security Advisor Marco Rubio is wrapping up his visit to the United Arab Emirates. He's also going to visit Kuwait and Bahrain. In a statement released by the State Department in the past hour, the Secretary of State indicated that there had been good talks with the Emiratis about bilateral relations, about security concerns that the Emiratis have about Iran, as well as bringing them up to date on where negotiations stand between the U.S. and Iran on trying to end the war, which began back on February 28th. This is, of course, an important trip for the Secretary of State to make because the U.S. needs to have buy-in from the Gulf countries, which sit closest to Iran. These countries were all targeted by Iranian airstrikes in the early weeks of the war. And they, of course, want to make certain that whatever agreement is reached between the U.S. and Iran does not unnecessarily or necessarily put them at risk.
Malik, we heard just there from Ross some of the themes that we're expecting to hear in these conversations Marco Rubio is having with the Gulf. Talks about the Strait of Hormuz, economic talks, security talks. What do the Gulf countries want long term when it comes to this memorandum of understanding and any agreement that comes after it?
Well, they want peace and stability. The Gulf countries have serious security concerns. They felt betrayed when Iran attacked the Gulf countries. We have to remember that during this war, Iran, these retaliation attacks against the Gulf bear the brunt of these retaliation attacks. Thousands of drones and missiles targeted Gulf countries. According to the International Energy Agency, more than 80 oil facilities were hit. In Kuwait, where Rubio is right now, water desalination plants were hit. The airport was hit. Commercial hubs, the oil refinery. I covered Kuwait extensively. They also had concerns when it comes to armed groups in Iraq that are affiliated with Iran. Even back then when I was covering in Kuwait, they were talking about a lot of these attacks coming from Iraq, from armed groups that are affiliated with Iran. Here in the Gulf, the main security is the main issue to keep the guns silent. Also, the freedom of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz. People here want, a long, comprehensive plan that will bring about peace and stability, not just right now, but for years and generations to come.
Okay, Malik Traina reporting live for us from here in Doha, and Rosalind Jordan live for us at the White House. Our thanks to you both. Iran is dealing with widespread destruction after months of attacks by Israel and the United States. The cost of rebuilding will likely run into the hundreds of billions of dollars. Mohammed Val
Before we go to that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the ashwagandha root. This will help to bring down cortisol levels and help you to control your blood glucose levels. Lignans will help your immune system, your endocrine system, help with brain function and cardiovascular system. It soaks up free radicals and brings down inflammation. Vitamin D3 helps with bone density, helps to get rid of cells that need to go into apoptosis if they're infected. Vitamin D3 also helps with cardiovascular health. And vitamin D3 will help with gene expression. It's a gene expression cofactor. Magnesium and zinc. This will help with brain function and boost up your immune system. And vitamin C and magnesium helps with brain function, helps with your immune system and your skin. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great supplements that I offer.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete AI creation platform. Describe what you want and watch it take shape. You can plan, customize, and expand in any direction. From tools built for one to platforms ready for many, from passion projects to enterprise-grade systems. Everything is built in and ready to launch. It's a new world of
Business Now. Sean Pellegrin is with us. He's focusing on tech sell-off that has rattled markets on Tuesday. Still having an impact, of course, this Wednesday as we are here in Europe.
Yeah, and perhaps more specifically than tech, this seems to be related to chips, the building blocks on which the AI boom is built on. Let's start by looking at how U.S. stocks closed the Tuesday session. The tech-heavy NASDAQ composite index fell 2.2%, with chip makers like Micron and SanDisk both falling more than 13%. The NASDAQ has fallen for 4 of the 5 past trading days. Meanwhile, in Asia, this Tuesday, well, we've seen a mixed picture. The Kospi in South Korea recovering some of its losses in this Wednesday session after falling 10% on Tuesday, dragged down by the big chip makers there, Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix. Taiwan's leading index, though, is lower this Wednesday, with semiconductor giant TSMC trading just under 4% lower. Let's look at the picture in Europe now at the open. European shares also weighed down by the tech sell-off at the open. The Cacao just a tiny bit higher, 0.1% higher, while the DAX in Frankfurt is 0.4% lower at the open.
So what's behind these moves on the markets then, Sean?
There's a number of factors at play here. AI-related stocks have been really on a tear, and perhaps it was time for a bit of a reversal to cool the temperatures a little bit. The major factor weighing on investors is how much capital expenditure is being spent on artificial intelligence, whether it's, quote, compute, meaning the resources necessary to train and run AI models, or data centers construction and power generation. All that is really exploding. Goldman Sachs estimated that over $7 trillion will be spent on this between 2026 and 2031, doubling from $765 billion this year to $1.6 trillion in 5 years. The issue here is whether this amount of spending will be made worth it by future profits. That discrepancy between current earnings and projected profits in the future contributed to the moves we saw in the markets, especially when increasingly AI firms seem to be engaged in a price war that is cutting into that profit forecast.
Now, one more factor playing a part, this is the higher likelihood of seeing interest rates rising.
U.S. Fed Chair Kevin Warsh signaled last week that rates could still go up by the end of the year in order to counter war-fueled inflation, in spite of Donald Trump's preference for lower rates. He said, quote, "I've said for years inflation is a choice. You bet it is. And today I'm announcing that this committee unambiguously and unanimously have decided we are going to deliver on that." Higher interest rates mean future profits, perhaps generated by AI capital expenditure, aren't worth as much for investors today.
Let's take a step back, though. It's only a small dent in what's an incredible rally, isn't it?
Yeah, the NASDAQ, for instance, grew over 28% over the past year or so, as you can see on that graph. And for the South Korean Kospi, it's almost 100% since the start of the year. But there is one thing to pay attention to in both the case of NASDAQ or the Kospi, the outsized weight that a small number of tech companies have on the entire index. Last year, over 43% of the NASDAQ was concentrated in the Magnificent Seven. That's the nickname given to the tech giants that are Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, Meta, Microsoft, NVIDIA, and Tesla. That's a small pool of companies to depend on.
Now we're going to turn to the heat wave. Some related news now, business-wise, as one of Europe's southernmost nations, this is Spain, no stronger to extreme heat. So how on earth, Sean, does it manage?
Well, following devastating floods in 2024, the country inaugurated a number of measures aimed at reducing the impact of heat waves on its workforce, from adapting working hours to even providing a maximum 4 days of paid leave for climate-related difficulties. Brian Quinn and our colleagues at France Télévisions have the details.
Coming on stronger and earlier, Spain is no stranger to heat waves, and it's taking action by necessity. In this Barcelona park, during the summer, groundskeepers start 45 minutes earlier and quit an hour and 45 minutes earlier, a policy now in place for several years. The big development this year, a connected bracelet that measures body temperature. The city has issued them to 1,500 of its outdoor workers.
It detects if we're getting close to heat stroke. If it vibrates, we stop and take a break.
Spain is in Europe's vanguard of adapting to climate hazards following the trauma of 2024's catastrophic floods in the Valencia region, in which 230 people died. On that day, despite a red alert, some businesses prevented their employees from going home early. Since then, the country's socialist government has instituted climate leave, a maximum of 4 paid days off during the highest alerts to limit travel. But data on its implementation has yet to come in, and few outdoor workers are even aware of it. Unions, meanwhile, point out the measure comes with plenty of restrictions.
There has to be a declared force majeure, a legally defined imminent and serious risk. Authorities have to issue a restriction on work-related travel.
Tuesday was Spain's hottest day of the week so far, with 5 provinces on red alert and temperatures of up to 46 degrees Celsius.
Sean Pellegrin, thanks so much with the business news on France 24.
Score up to $52,000 in bonuses when you start trading with ON and predict this summer's winning soccer team. Stay on the ball with 68 Forex pairs and advanced charting tools. Learn more at oanda.com/soccer promo.
Do you want to know how to become a U.S. permanent resident? Most visa pathways require an employer willing to sponsor you, winning a lottery, or investing hundreds of thousands of dollars. But there's another option designed for professionals with a bachelor's and 5 years of experience or an advanced degree. It's called the EB2 NIW. And I want to share how it works. I'm attorney Carlos Colombo. I've been a U.S. immigration lawyer for over 25 years. I've worked with thousands of professionals through the EB2 national interest waiver process. I understand your situation because I lived it myself. My family and I went through the U.S. immigration process together. And over the past 2 decades, I've guided thousands of professionals.
President Trump is making it clear that Iran must ensure its commitment to long-term nuclear honesty.
And in a new Truth Social post, he writes this: Iran has informed the U.S. that despite troublemaking fake news reporting to the contrary, there are no tolls, no insurance costs, and no other charges of any kind being sought or received by Iran on ships traveling through the Strait. This is false information. Negotiations would end immediately.
Trey Hinks joins us live in Tel Aviv with the latest. Trey.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. I just spoke with President Trump about the situation with Iran and the ongoing negotiations. There have been some back and forth as it relates to the issue of inspectors going into Iran to look at the country's nuclear sites. Now we have both President Trump, Vice President Vance, and the head of the IAEA saying that inspectors will be allowed to go into the country and look at these sites and identify where the highly enriched uranium is located. Here's what the Director General said earlier today.
This has been signed, has been agreed. Paragraph 8 of this Memorandum of Understanding says explicitly that the nuclear activities that are going to be carried out with regards to the nuclear material facilities will be supervised by the IAEA in all letters.
While the timeline is unclear, President Trump says there is no rush getting these inspectors into the country, but told Fox News that U.S. inspectors will join the IAEA when they ultimately go into Iran to locate this highly enriched uranium that we know is buried deep underground. The president describing this as a mountain that collapsed on this material after those B-2 bombers targeted Iran during Operation Midnight Hammer. The president was asked about the Iranian denial yesterday, saying this.
They know they're wrong. They told us inside, and we have it down 100% inspection. And if they were right, I'd cancel the meetings right now. When will those inspectors actually be on the ground? At the appropriate time. At the appropriate time. There's no rush, but they'll be on the ground at the appropriate time.
The president's remarks come as more vessels are passing through the Strait of Hormuz with millions of barrels of crude oil exiting the Persian Gulf each day. The ceasefire appears to be making progress on this front. Now, Secretary of State Marco Rubio is in the Middle East for meetings about the agreement and the path forward. He said this on Tuesday about Iran.
If Iran makes a decision, if its leadership makes a decision that they want to be a country instead of a revolutionary movement that exports terror, they're going to have an opportunity to do incredible things in Iran. I'm not promising you that that's the choice they're going to make. I'm saying if that's the choice that they make, then there will be opportunity.
We've heard from U.S. officials the Iranians are going to receive sanctions relief or oil sanctions waivers only if they uphold their end of the bargain. And the initial oil waiver that went out for the Iranians earlier this week by the Treasury Department is actually linked, according to U.S. officials, to buying American goods. And President Trump tells Fox News the initial number is going to be around $500 million worth of U.S. goods to be purchased for the Iranian people. Guys.
So Trey, just for clarity, you're not talking about the frozen funds. You're talking about the funds that are earned because they're selling the oil at market prices for the first time in years. That money, is that what you're talking about? Or are you talking about the frozen funds that would be used to buy American products, primarily agricultural?
So U.S. officials have indicated this will be frozen funds that will go into what is considered an escrow account that will have oversight from the United States and from Qatar. And the money is expected to come from that account. And again, will directly purchase both farm goods and medical supplies, according to U.S. officials, for the Iranian people. And the hope here, according to U.S. officials, is that this ultimately will create an environment where the U.S. not only has oversight of the money that the Iranians are able to use, but also it's something that could help the civilian population of Iran, more than 90 million people that have suffered as a result of this conflict.
Yeah, it's just so interesting, Trey, because we were told the same thing when it came to Hamas as well. And they took a lot of those products that were meant for the people and used it for themselves. So we're going to be following. Thanks so much, Trey.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
Charles Tyrwhitt, made for summer. Casual shirts for laid-back weekends. Breezy linen shirts built for the heat. Smart shirts that mean business. And relaxed polos for a little exploration. Dress well. Charles Tyrwhitt.
There on the right-hand side of your screen, you are taking a live look
There on the right-hand side of your screen, you are taking a live look over the Strait of Hormuz coming in from marine traffic as we get to the latest on the U.S.-Iran conflict. Take a look right here at this post from Iran International English. Now, Iran's parliament speaker claiming today that the U.S. lost the war, saying the outcome demonstrates just that. He took part in those negotiations this weekend in Switzerland with the U.S. side led, of course, by Vice President J.D. Vance. And this morning, Iran International English reporting that the speaker said the memorandum of understanding between Iran and the U.S. turned into a, quote, declaration of U.S. defeat. President Trump maintaining that is clearly not the case, and he also responded to the Senate passing the War Powers Resolution aimed at halting the U.S. military operations in Iran. He took to Truth Social overnight with a fairly lengthy post saying, quote, so I have Iran on the ropes, ready to go down for the fall, willing to give us practically anything, and for the first time in decades, respecting the hell out of the United States and its president, and the U.S. Senate decides to have a poorly timed and meaningless War Powers Act vote, telling the number one sponsor of terror in the world that the United States doesn't like what I am doing to them, and I must stop, and by so doing has provided aid and comfort to the enemy. 4 Republican losers voted with the Democrats, and Iran asked my people, quote, what does that all mean? These senators have just made my job more difficult, but I will get it done one way or the other because I always get it done. President DJT. All right, so as always, a lot to discuss here. Do want to bring in Dr. Ali Baez, the Iran project director at the International Crisis Group, as we break down all of the latest details. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today.
Good morning, John. Great to be with you.
Good morning. Well, first off, I want to ask you about some of those remarks there made by Iran's parliamentary speaker. Of course, he's not going to say that Iran has lost the war. Both sides, of course, saying that they won in their own way. What do you make of those remarks from Iran's parliament speaker there?
Well, you're absolutely right. It is not a surprise at all. In fact, the narrative of victory on both sides, by definition, is going to be incompatible because they have very different domestic political requirements. So whatever the Iranians say to their own audience at home is going to backfire in Washington and vice versa. This is just inevitable. I was around in 2015 when we had a nuclear deal with the Iranians. It was the exact same thing. So this is not a surprise at all.
And as we look, of course, at the remarks from President Trump, essentially, as we see all of this unfold, there was the passage of that War Powers Act that happened yesterday in the Senate. That's really not going to have an impact on the war itself. But what I wanted to ask you is, do you see any sort of end to this conflict overall? Because we have the memorandum of understanding, we have the potential for an official deal taking place over the next under 60 days at this point. Do you see an end to this conflict anytime soon?
So on the War Powers Resolution Act, the timing of it is a little puzzling because you could say that as long as we had the blockade, the U.S. blockade of Iranian forces in place, that was an act of war. And therefore, you could say one way or another, maybe the conflict was continuing. The Operation Epic Fury was over, but because the blockade was in place, the conflict was ongoing. But now that we have also removed the blockade, there is no active hot war at this moment. And therefore, the resolution seems to be a little out of place. That's point number one. To answer your question, I think the war is over. I have a hard time imagining that we would go back into full-fledged hostilities because I think both sides have realized that they cannot deliver the knockout blow to the other at an acceptable cost. If opening the Strait of Hormuz through use of military force was really, in terms of cost-benefit, doable, the president would have done it already. If seizing the stockpile of highly enriched uranium in Iran was doable, the president would have done it already. Same for the Iranians. They are in a very tight economic spot. Their economy was in dire straits even before this conflict. Now they're even struggling more. And that's why they need the economic reprieve that has come as part of this understanding. I really believe that neither side really has an interest in going back to war. Now, this is, of course, as long as diplomacy is ongoing and has a positive momentum. If diplomacy fails, then there is, of course, the risk at some point, maybe towards the end of this year or early next year, that we might end up in another round of confrontation. I don't see it in the immediate.
One thing that we've heard, President Trump, also Vice President J.D. Vance, they have said that Iran, as part of the deal here, is going to allow those UN inspectors, the IAEA, to go into Iran and take a look at those nuclear sites. But Iran coming back and saying they never agreed to that. That back and forth that's happening, do you believe that the IAEA is going to be able to get in there? And what does all of this kind of say? Because that's a big sticking point for the U.S. is that nuclear program needs to be monitored and needs to essentially go away.
Well, if you look at the text.
So I was throwing a cowgirl-themed bachelorette party, which naturally required sequin cowboy hats for all 10 guests. But what did I get? What the?
On this episode of The Nice Effect, Kristen Bell shows how Nice CXAI powers customer service for the brands you know best, helping retailers resolve customer issues so quickly that wrong orders can feel almost too easy to fix.
Hi, I just had a few questions. Where was my original order? How do I return all these? And maybe do I want to keep one if it doesn't make my head look too small? I mean, I don't hate it. It's just not what I ordered. But then, thanks to Nice AI, it all just got handled. Return label in my email. Order tracked. Problem solved. Now, if only Nice AI agents could help me figure out the perfect gift for the bride-to-be. Howdy, Kristen. I reckon she'd love these sequin cowboy boots. Ooh, nice. That's why leading brands choose Nice.
Well, if you look at the text of the Memorandum of Understanding, Josh, you would see that there is no clear commitment to let the IAEA in immediately, and Iran would have to negotiate probably a specific set of modalities for the agency to be able to have access. I don't think there is any precedent for the IAEA visiting bombed nuclear facilities. So this has to be a separate negotiation between Iran and the IAEA. Of course, Iran has committed in very general terms as part of this MOU that it would subject this program to the highest level of transparency measures, or as the president calls it, nuclear honesty. But we have to get to that point in stage 2 of the negotiation. So this will be part of the ongoing diplomatic track. I don't think it is going to happen as a result of the MOU.
And it's also important to note here that as we look at this live look over Beirut at this hour, we've seen the conflict between Israel and the Hezbollah terror group there in Lebanon. And at this point, it appears that maybe for the most part, things are fairly calm. But can you explain for folks out there kind of how all of this factors in? Because it sounds as though the situation with Israel and Hezbollah really is not involved in this Iran deal, even though Iran says it needs to be.
Well, in fact, I would say this is the biggest point of vulnerability for the understanding between Iran and the U.S., because at the end of the day, Israel was not party to these negotiations, and Iran and the U.S. deciding that the war in Lebanon would have to end without one of the belligerents having a say in it is problematic from Israel's perspective. But the Iranians did insist that this has to be included. The first article of the Memorandum of Understanding makes it clear that the war has to end on all fronts, and it actually particularly names Lebanon. Now, the reason the Iranians insisted on this is because this is the first time in Hezbollah's history, Josh, that it came into a battle against Israel on behest of Iran and not based on its own calculations. And so it was very difficult for the Iranians to throw Hezbollah under the bus, especially because they're not sure if this war is over or there will be another round a few months down the road. And they cannot afford to lose credibility with the regional partners and allies out of fear that, if there is another round of confrontation, then the Houthis in Yemen or the Iraqi militias, they would not basically cover their rescue. So this is why Iran insisted on it. It is also true that as long as Israel's occupation of southern Lebanon continues, by definition, there will be tit-for-tat confrontations between Israel and Hezbollah, and that would continue to destabilize this understanding between Iran and the U.S. So it is a very tricky situation.
And on that note, of course, we have the ceasefire that's in place. As you know, it is very fragile, though. If there is continued back and forth, is that a possibility? Could we still see Hezbollah firing at Israel, Israel firing at Hezbollah? Could that continue? And is that really a violation of any kind of ceasefire? As we know, a ceasefire doesn't necessarily mean that it's an end to the fighting. It can more so be just dying down the fighting.
Yeah, we'll have to see. This will be tested in practice in terms of how much tolerance would the parties have about the violation of this measure, which is, again, clearly stated in the MOU as a requirement. At this point, it appears that very limited confrontations are tolerable. But if there are major attacks, especially in Beirut, so not just in the south of the Litani River, but in Beirut, where Hezbollah's headquarters is, in the southern neighborhood of Dahia, that seems to be crossing a red line, or some sort of high casualty event, either for the Israelis or for the Lebanese. But let me also say that there is an opportunity now to further isolate Hezbollah, because there is now a much more reasonable government in Lebanon, and negotiating with that government, which basically is now happening. The U.S. is facilitating talks between Israel and the Lebanese government, is a better way of trying to address this issue, because there's simply no military solution to this problem. Israel has invaded Lebanon almost a dozen times since the 1980s. And every time it hasn't been able to really resolve the problem with Hezbollah militarily.
My last question here, as we take a live look over the Strait of Hormuz, once again, it looks like there is some more activity than we saw maybe a month or two ago at this point. You can see the arrows that are showing the movement of some of those vessels there, oil tankers, other vessels who are using the strait at this point. What are you going to be watching for here in the coming hours, days, maybe weeks, as we see everything kind of play out overall between the U.S. and Iran?
So I would say there are two very important things to watch for. One is, as we speak, there are still technical experts who are negotiating in Switzerland. Talks are ongoing at the expert level. And we'll have to see if they produce new understandings, because this is where the bicycle rule applies. If you're not moving forward, you're going to fall down. So if there is no positive momentum, it will be very difficult to keep a fragile process like this alive, given what we have so far discussed, the differences in narratives and also what's happening in Lebanon. So you need more constructive steps by both sides. That's point number one. Number two is to look at the traffic in the Strait of Hormuz, because it is going up, as your graphic showed. But we're so far from where we were prior to this conflict, where we had 130, 140 vessels going through. Now, there is mine-sweeping operations that would be ongoing in the international waterway. So a lot of traffic is going through the Iranian territorial waters and the Omani waters. But at some point, there needs to be additional degree of confidence within the vessel operator community and the insurance companies in order to make sure that we reach the pre-war status vessels getting in at Strait of Hormuz.
All right, Dr. Ali Baez, thank you so much for taking the time to join us, helping to break down all the latest developments here. We get them coming in on a minutely, hourly basis, so I'm sure a lot will progress today. Anything we missed, anything that you want to make sure to add before I let you go?
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the vitamin B complex. This will help to rev up your metabolism, help with your increases of ATP, helps the mitochondria and the electron transport chain, and protects neurons. Resveratrol helps with youthful gene expression, soaks up free radicals, helps the health of your mitochondria, boosts up your ATP. You'll have more energy. It also helps the basal layer for your skin. Stacks really well with C60. And Goodnight formula has tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower that allow you to get into those 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep. When you do that regularly, you're detoxifying your central nervous system, you're consolidating memory, and you'll be well rested. It'll slow down the aging process and help your brain function by getting good sleep. So please go to my store and get the Goodnight formula. It stacks really well with the resveratrol and the vitamin B complex. Why? You're improving your cellular metabolism and protecting neurons. You're soaking up free radicals and helping your mitochondria, including the mitochondria in your brain and your neurons, so they're healthier. A Goodnight formula will allow you to get into those 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Reddit Wall Street Bets, which was later removed, encouraged its members to, quote, save Wendy's before it's too late. Wendy's stock, by the way, had tumbled over 70% since mid-2023, and the company is in the middle of a turnaround to improve its sales. Oil is on the downside. Brent crude $73.72 a barrel, lowest level since the war with Iran began. WTI crude now at $70 a barrel, a loss there of 4%, and the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index up 1/3% at 1227.54. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Alexis Christophorous, and that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul and Scarlett.
All right, Alexis, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Scarlett Fu, Paul Sweeney live in our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio, streaming live on YouTube as well. As Alexis was just reporting, Micron is reporting after the close today. That is a big tech name that the market really focuses on. Why not? Stocks up 267% year to date after they're soft for the last couple of days. And on a trailing 12-month basis, stocks up 718%. And it's not like it's a paper stock, over-the-counter stock. This is $1.2 trillion in market cap.
And it came very abruptly this year. And it's not just Micron. I look at the best performers in the S&P 500. Yeah. SanDisk, Western Digital, Seagate, they're all up at least by that amount. SanDisk up 725%.
Yeah, exactly. Jake Silverman, he is our semiconductor analyst at Bloomberg Intelligence. He joins us live here in our New York studio. Jake, what are you and the street going to be looking for from Micron after the close tonight?
Yeah, I think we're going to be looking for continued pricing momentum. It's been continually up over the last however many quarters. I lost track at this point. But really, I think the key thing at this point are signals about not just this quarter, not just next quarter, but the long term. Contracts, how many contracts they've signed, the length of those contracts, details about pricing and bit demand.
Wait, can I interrupt for 1 second? Is this pricing for DRAMs or for the high bandwidth memory chips?
More so for DRAM in general.
Oh.
They haven't given a lot of details about high bandwidth memory in terms of their pricing agreements. And, there's a lot of information out there, about the pricing, at least for the products in general, not necessarily Micron's pricing, but we think it's pretty competitive with the market. But I think more so what investors are going to be focused on is, NAND and DRAM generally, what are those contracts? How many do they have signed? The value, et cetera, et cetera.
So there's a memory chip shortage, correct? A, how did we get there? And B, realistically, how did we fix it?
Yeah, so I got to take a little bit of a history lesson, I think. I'll keep it brief. But basically, there was a pretty severe downturn before the recent AI run-up. And so there was an underinvestment in capacity for a little bit because there was so much cash burn, tens of billions of dollars in the industry. So there was no real incentive to increase capacity because they wanted to make sure that their fabs were filled. You know, when I say they, it's Micron, SK Hynix, Samsung, SanDisk, et cetera. And so really the key here to think about is supply and demand. So when we think about how does this get solved, well, AI demand is so strong. I mean, PC demand, smartphone demand was fairly healthy up until more recently. There's some demand destruction related to the memory pricing, but generally speaking, premium tier products are continually doing fairly well. Apple's increasing some pricing, but you know, I don't know that the elasticity impact will be that high. You know, me personally, if my phone is $100 more expensive, maybe it doesn't necessarily mean I'm not going to upgrade to the next iPhone. You know, anecdotally, obviously, but we need more supply in the industry in order to offset some of the pricing increases. But that does seem to be occurring.
Okay, so put into context for us this headline that we got this week that really sent the memory chip stocks lower. There was a report out of South Korea that SK Hynix is slowing expansion of its AI memory chip production. What does that mean, and what does that mean for the likes of Micron, SanDisk, and everyone here?
Yeah, so there's a few moving parts to keep in mind. That might be the case if they're slowing their high bandwidth memory reduction. It could be timing related. You know, Samsung got into NVIDIA's Vera Rubin server. So it could be maybe they thought there was going to be a little bit of additional demand. Maybe they thought they would maintain majority share. Now they're not. Maybe they thought that there's some timing differences in procurement by a month or two. So, you know, because there's a supply shortage, they maybe didn't transition as many lines over to HBM because they want to make sure that they can supply to their customers. It also could just be the case that general DRAM is more profitable right now. And so they're more than happy to accelerate the expansion of HBM in the future while maintaining some of that higher profitability, you know, higher product profitability lines for now.
Just in your preview note, I'm talking about a 60% increase in DRAM prices and NAND pricing rising at least 75% sequentially. You can't do that, can you?
Well, that's following on some pretty similar price increases last quarter. Yeah.
So who's paying that higher price? Is that the Apples of the world?
Yeah, that's Apple. That's
eventually us.
Yeah, so you're literally picking up the phone if you're, you know, Micron saying, Apple, I'm raising the prices on these chips by 75%.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, that's why Apple's, I think, at this point, they want to maintain a certain level of margins. I know Apple's trying to offset it with services and other areas where they can actually have higher margins, but at a certain point, I think they look at the product margins and just want to maintain at least some level of that, knowing they have, you know, some pricing.
That's pricing power.
And once an Apple does that, then everyone else follows suit, right?
I think everyone else is already doing it for the most part. Apple's maybe a little bit late to the game.
So how long can you think about those kinds of pricing increases for? What's the street looking for?
Yeah, so I think the numbers that I published are probably fairly close to what the street is estimating. At the point right now, we think that there's going to be continual double-digit quarter-over-quarter pricing increases through the end of the year. It will be decelerating. I think 60 and 75% levels are unsustainable, but yeah, we couldn't expect to see that.
So this memory chip pricing used to be very cyclical. It had its ups, its downs. Is that gone now?
I don't think that we're out of the woods of cyclicality yet. I think really what you need to be looking for is AI CapEx and then supply, additional capacity in the industry. Because, look, I mean, I think we're in an elongated upcycle right now, just generally for a lot of semiconductors outside of, say, you know, the analog semiconductors. It's all really, for the most part, it's AI driven, right? I mean, it's all AI servers, the supporting infrastructure around that. So with Micron, I think what we're looking for in terms of cyclicality is, you know, not necessarily is cyclicality over, but when does the cycle start to peak? It doesn't seem like there's any ability for that to happen in the next 12 months, just simply because there's not enough capacity that can come online. The only way to offset it would be, you know, lower AI CapEx or, you know, really a lot of demand destruction on PCs or smartphones or something else.
You know, when oil was like $100 a barrel, I said I'm going down to Texas and drill it.
Yeah.
Now I think I'm going to go in my backyard and build a fab and start putting some chips out there.
And if you have any additional memory modules in your basement, maybe
that's what I'll,
you know,
Paul always has a side hustle.
Side hustle. Jake Silverman, thank you so much for your appreciation. Semiconductor analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. We got Micron report.
All right, what I want to do is pivot over to the interview by Sean Hannity with Senator Fetterman. I think he's going to be talking about the crazy left wing of the Democratic Party. But before we do, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the C60. C60 is a very potent antioxidant. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. It is cheaper per ounce to get the higher ounce configuration on my store. You can get it in avocado oil or extra virgin olive oil or MCT coconut oil. C60 is a very powerful antioxidant. Take a teaspoon a day, every day. And what this will do is improve your skin, help with your immune system and your endocrine system, help with brain function, and also help with cardiovascular system. How? It soaks up free radicals and brings down inflammation. And when you do that, you're helping your tissues perform better, especially the cells and the mitochondria. You're soaking up those free radicals. Your mitochondria will be healthier. You'll produce more ATP. You'll have more energy. You'll have less inflammation. At the vascular level, you're reducing the concentrations of oxidized LDL because you're soaking up those free radicals. So you're reducing plaque formation. You're helping the health of your neurons so they can produce neurotransmitters and have that positive neuroplasticity. You'll be able to think better. And it helps with their basal layer for your skin, so your skin improves. This stacks really well with resveratrol for your skin. So please go to my store, get the C60, take it every day. I've been taking C60 every day, a teaspoon a day, for over 10 years. Omega-3 helps with your cardiovascular system, helps to bring down inflammation and bring down LDL levels and help to improve your HDL levels. So you're improving your cardiovascular health. Omega-3 also helps to prevent the stickiness of your red blood cells. So please go to my store, take the omega-3 every day. It stacks well with C60. It's a powerful stack for cardiovascular health. And Boomer Boost. Boomer Boost has 68 nutrients. This will have the minerals, the supplements, and the vitamins that you need every day to help slow down the aging process, to improve your endocrine system and your immune system, help with your cardiovascular system, help with brain function, help with musculature, and help with energy levels and metabolism. It's very powerful. Take it every day. It's a month supply. Super important. And you can stack it with the C60 for that added benefit. You're soaking up free radicals and you're helping your system. Oh, you do this regularly, you're going to notice that you're healthier and you're slowing down the aging process. And stack it with better lifestyle. Do some resistance training and cardio. More resistance training than cardio. You want about a 60-40 split or a 70-30 split. Balancing exercises and stretching. Learning new things. Train your mind. Talk to people. Have some mindfulness of spirituality to calm down your central nervous system. You want to go into parasympathetic mode so you're relaxed and your body's healing. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Boomer Boost. All right. What does Fetterman have to say?
Finally be able to stand up to this extreme brand of politics, or is it just going to be Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman as the only Democrat with an ounce of moral clarity and courage? Here with more tonight's stories. Senator Fetterman is with us. What's your reaction to this? Because to me, this represents nothing of the old Democratic Party that we once knew.
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, the kind of people that they're trying to run out of office. I mean, they're just good traditional kinds of Democrats you would have expected in New York City now, and now this has just become really. It's just been the dancing days of the dirtbag left. You know, with some of these candidates are outrageous. You know, you have candidates. They abolish ICE, abolish the police, abolish the border. And she even said F Kamala Harris and more of these outrageous kinds of things. And then you have like Mandami. He was grieving Hamas sniper was killed by Israel just the other day, and he was grieving that. I mean, these are emerging the full pro-Hamas wing. You know, a lot of these candidates that very likely are going to win tonight just declaring a war on just regular Democrats.
All right, let me ask this. Why the deep hatred for Israel? Why?
Yeah, because I mean, if you have such contempt for Israel, I mean, of course, you're also anti-American and you're anti-Western civilization, and you're seeing anti-capitalism and the American way of life. I mean, now they're all socialists, of course, and now there's a communist and now Marxist, and now they're proud of this. And now, of course, we have Pete Hussle in Maine. You know, that's another one. He's a self-avowed, communist too. Now that's not even looked down now and a significant part of the Democratic Party right now.
All right, let me ask you this. Assuming Mamdani has a good night with his, picks tonight, what does that mean for the Democratic Party nationwide? We've got Graham Plattner, we got Tallarico, you got El Sayed, you got Mamdani, you got Grandpa Bernie and Pocahontas and AOC. If Mamdani has a very successful night tonight in terms of the people he's supporting, what does that mean overall nationally for the Democratic Party?
Well, I mean, there's some people I would include in that, but there's definitely people like the guy in Michigan, but all of them have intensely anti-Israel thing. Now, I remain as really the last Democrat in the Senate that's proud to stand with Israel. Absolutely. And now these kinds of places like that coffee house are calling out a Jew that you're banned, just for what reason? I mean, that's what's becoming part of the Democratic Party. And now hating on Israel and essentially anti-Semitism has become like the center of a lot of these primaries across the country, and definitely that we're witnessing in New York City.
But Senator, years gone by, you would be considered a mainstream Democrat. I was very close to Joe Lieberman, for example, a great guy. He would not want to be a part of this movement either. You're like the only person that is standing against it. What about the other people in your party? Where's Chuck Schumer? Where are other prominent Democrats? Why won't they speak out against this madness?
I mean, I'm proud to stand with Israel, whether if I'm the last Democrat, here or not. I'm proud to stand with Israel, and I'm going to call out what I'm witnessing all across the country and all of these races. And you have these kinds of candidates that are actively trying to cram as much anti-Israel and essentially anti-Semitism into their platform. And now these are the kinds of people that are winning right now. Now, whether it's a Nazi tattoo or if it's actually someone like a Chevalier going to the pro-Hamas rally on 10/8 after 10/7 and celebrating the 10/7 massacre. Look at these kinds of people in the circles that they're in. Look at the kinds of things that Mandami's wife had liked on social media. The kinds of music that she listens to, these views, that thing, just intensely anti-Israel and intensely anti-Jewish.
So let me ask you this, because assuming they keep winning, let's say Mamdani has a big night tonight in terms of the people that he supports. What does that say for the future of people like you? Because I kind of look at you now on an island by yourself. What does it say about the future of the Democratic Party if formerly a mainstream Democrat like yourself is not even wanted in the party? Why do I think they will go after you? Why do I think they'd want to primary you? Why do I think they would like to replace you with a more radical person?
And well, what I'm saying is, of course, people will come against me. And if the Democrats want a dirtbag with a Nazi tattoo, well, they've picked that in Maine, and he knows he'll win here. But whether it's Pete Hussle or whether it's kind of these radical people in Michigan or the ones in New York City that seems like they're going to win. I think I just saw I read that Lander won, so that's one of his candidates, won. So now that's going to become the lesson that the Democratic Party is going to continue to be anti-Israel, and I'll be the one that's going to continue to lean in and proud to stand with Israel through the midterms, and definitely lean into 28 for sure, proudly.
Let me ask you about Iran, Senator, if I may. I think the president has been very clear. I believe he set back their nuclear program a minimum of 10 years. The president keeps saying he has time. He's not worried about the time frame. He's trying to work out a peace deal. He doesn't want to impact the 94 million people in the population of Iran, which I think is thoughtful. If he ruins the economy, I don't think they have a shot at coming back anytime soon. Do you think the president has adopted the right strategy?
Well, what I will say, I mean, because there's been plenty of people that are really angry or disappointed by the outcome, and there were parts of it that I definitely didn't like and wouldn't support that. But I will say that I will always support, and he made the right decision to actually bomb the nuclear facilities just last year in June. And also Epic Fury was a significant win too, to significantly degrade the military and to kill the leadership, without a doubt. And there are other parts of it that I don't support or really understand. But as long as I'm going to continue to follow Israel through all of this and their interest and the kinds of security that they demand, and for me, that's why I was being the only Democrat that would vote and continue to vote for it, just as this afternoon. You know, the nuclear dust. Now, I think I've read now that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard agreed now to allow UN to check it out. But you know, whatever that is, but we can't ever allow Iran to fire a nuclear bomb. And now I would like to remind people too, the Iranians were effectively like the Nazis of another time. You know, wouldn't you look at a president that was trying to destroy the Nazis? You know, and was it a complete victory? But no, you would look back and say that was the right thing to strike and try to destroy Iran. This is the kind of region they would kill every one of us, and they would love to destroy the Israeli civilization. Yes.
This just broke. Dan Goldman, who is discriminated against today, just lost to the Mamdani candidate. That race now has been called. Brad Lander beat Dan Goldman. That surprised me.
Yeah, no, it doesn't surprise me. I fully expect that, and I think you're going to see. I can almost guarantee. You know, the one that calls to abolish police, abolish the border. There are no reasons to ever to deport anybody, and abolishing prisons. I mean, she said all of this. She actually said F Kamala Harris. I mean, these are the people who we are electing, and they're going to send them here to Congress. Someone who wants to abolish our border and abolish prison, you know, that's not a Democrat. That's a full-on lunatic. I can't imagine, you know, this is the kind of model that we're going to win real elections. Yeah, you can elect someone like that in a district in New York, but when you're in a state like Pennsylvania, that's going to keep you honest. And my views now have put me out an outlier, but that is beyond absurd. Now, as we continue to witness it, what's happening, whether in Maine or Michigan or here, you're going to see what's going to happen here in New York as well.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.
I needed 10 sequin cowboy hats for a bet.
Trump puts oil companies on notice, orders DOJ to take action immediately. So I wonder what that's all about. So that's on Fox News. But before we listen to that clip, please go to my store, get the Cleanse or the Max 35 or Max 14. Either one of them will help to improve your innate immune system. You take a teaspoon a day, swish it in your mouth, gargle about 20 seconds or 30 seconds. It'll neutralize, help the health of your oral cavity and your oral pharynx, maintain your mucosal barrier, and help the health of your epithelial cells. This will help to boost up your innate immune system. Super important to help slow down the aging process, and it neutralizes. So it's really important to do every day to improve your oral cavity. By improving your oral cavity, you're reducing cardiovascular problems, valvular problems. It's great to help to neutralize allergens, and during the cold season, it'll help to neutralize. So it's important to take a teaspoon a day, every day. I've been doing this protocol for over 6 years, every day. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. And you'll notice that if you stack it with the C60, take it, swish it in your mouth, right? And then take the teaspoon of, so another way to do this that I've noticed is that take the Max 35, Max 14 or cleanse, take the teaspoon of solution and swish in your mouth, gargle 20 seconds and swallow it. All right. And then right after that, take a teaspoon of the C60 and then take that, ingest it. And what you'll notice is that first 2 weeks or so, you'll notice that you'll be able to breathe better. And what's happening is that it's relaxing your bronchial tubes, and you'll be able to breathe better, right? Plus, it's bringing down inflammation. So it's bringing down inflammation and then allowing for the bronchial tubes to dilate. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Against a message of everyone gets free stuff and tax the rich, you have to highlight that when you increase taxes, revenue falls because that tax base leaves.
That's a great example, that Mississippi, UK example. All right, let's drill down into specific.
Lost it. We'll skip that. We'll skip that. Let's listen into Bloomberg about Montani.
85% of NCAA fans have abandoned a purchase because the wait was too long. But AI facial recognition and cashless point-of-sale systems help shorten lines with reliable and secure connectivity for AT&T Business.
I think a couple of things. One is that just remember, politics are local. So we're talking about one of, if not the most liberal city in America. But what this does show you, what sort of the primary results show you last night is, one, Mamdani has incredible star power. He went 3 for 3 in terms of endorsing folks who ended up winning. But two, there is a lot of anti-incumbent anger. And you saw this, you've seen this on the Republican side, just as a reminder. Yeah. And now you're seeing it on the Democratic side as well. And then number 3 is that the Democratic Socialists, at least here in New York City, are much better organized than the party. So grassroots outreach, all of that stuff still matters. I think this is very much expected that the Republicans will sort of demagogue this. They'll make this sort of the face of the Democratic Party. I think it is also important just to remember that other folks, more moderate candidates, actually won last night on the Democratic side in Utah, in upstate New York, down in Maryland. So I'm not sure that we should be extrapolating massive themes about kind of the future of the Democratic Party. But what is clear from on the Republican side and Democratic side, and people are angry and they're mad at incumbents and they're taking them out on the sort of the political class, if you will.
Democratic Socialists, I'm not really even sure what that is, but is that a national thing?
Well, again, I mean, it's definitely a thing in the urban cities. Okay. So what you've seen in LA, what you're seeing in Washington, D.C., and here in New York. And again, what do Democratic Socialists stand for? Mm-hmm. I think it is pretty amorphous, honestly. But their outreach, their grassroots, their organizing, I mean, has been stellar. And as a result, they are doing well in these cities. Again, I would just be. I would not extrapolate necessarily to national politics. New York City, LA, Washington, D.C., obviously, very different. The other thing I think just to remember is that we haven't gotten the final voter turnout figures, but it's like 10% of voters voted last night, if that.
Okay, I get it that 42 people voted.
Were you one of them?
Okay, but here's a sub headline in the Washington Post. Hakeem Jeffries-backed candidates lose key primary races. How does a mainstream Democrat in Michigan adapt and adjust to this anger? This is, Laura says, this anti-establishment anger.
So again, I mean, I think they'll try to tap into this. I mean, this is a theme. We're just seeing this. So whatever your labels you put on it, you're seeing that voters are angry about gas and groceries and housing and healthcare. And now AI is the new boogeyman. And so, I think that what Democrats who are moderate, who are winning and need to win in kind of purple, if not reddish districts, they'll try to kind of tap into the bigger themes and try to stay away from the labels. Now, of course, question if they can do that. I think Republicans are going to try to be smart about pinning Mamdani on the entire Democratic Party. As we know, Democrats are a big tent, so they'll try to use that as their kind of rationalization.
Please.
So most of our viewers and listeners were just enjoying the early days of summer, but boy, the midterms are right around the corner. What's the feeling these days about how this might play out in midterms?
Well, I think that, again, anti-incumbency. I think this, and so I would argue that Democrats were a casualty of this in 2024. Voters were angry then. They put President Trump, obviously, pretty unequivocally into the White House. Republicans won both chambers. I think you're going to see a little bit of a reversal of that. Now, the Democrats probably winning the House. I think Republicans will still keep the Senate. But again, I think that the overall theme is that the political establishment is not working for voters, and voters will take that out on either party or both parties.
With all your connections, with all your heritage to Washington, if there's a four-box dilemma, the basic idea that if the Democrats mess this up midterm and presidential 28, that the Republicans will win again. Can the Democrats get their act together and coalesce into a winning message?
They have to be something other than just anti-Trump. And because they are kind of a bunch of cats and dogs, a big umbrella party, as you know, that's the history, of course. It's a big tent. This is sort of the heritage of the Democratic Party, as you know very well, Tom. So, can they, though, coalesce around several key themes or key messages that are not just anti-Trump? That has been the glue for the party since 2016. I think it's a pretty fragile base in order to win elections.
The probability of me understanding this is 0.
You should AI that with Copilot.
Explain it to me like I'm 5.
Let's listen into Al Jazeera talking about the flow of oil through the strait.
So what do these numbers tell us? Traffic is picking up, but the backlog is still massive. And clearing it will take a lot more than a line of communication between Washington and Tehran.
Nader Al-Saif is a professor at Kuwait University. He's also a fellow at Chatham House. He's joining us live from Rome. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. I want to talk specifically about this visit by Secretary of State Marco Rubio that he's making to the Gulf states following the war and also following the memorandum of understanding that's been signed. We have reported on the fact that the relations between the US and the Gulf states became very frayed, shall we say, at specific points during that war. There was a certain amount of distrust that the Gulf states were putting forward with regard to the relationship they had with the US. How difficult a mission do you think the Secretary of State has now to try to rebuild the trust?
Well, this follows a lot of trips that his counterparts have made to Washington, D.C. in the past few months. In terms of the U.S. Secretary visiting the Gulf region, I think it's a long overdue trip, and it's one that's necessary to reassure their partners in the region that they are real partners and moving forward. As you know, the war started without consulting with the Gulf states. It took us by surprise, and the reaction of Iran, which was expected, but not at the scale that we saw. Again, we bore the brunt of the attacks, Rob, when it came to the attacks that came from Iran in the last few months. 7,000 distinct attacks across the Gulf states, even more than those being sent to Iran. And hence, we have a clear role to play in what comes next. Having the Qataris, along with Pakistan, involved in the mediation is encouraging. We need to be in the room, but we need to be actively shaping outcomes that not only guarantee peace and prosperity for the US and Iran, but for the rest of the region, including the Gulf states.
One of the key elements that within these negotiations has obviously been Iran's capacity to fire missiles and drones towards the Gulf states, which we saw during the war. In terms of the priority that's being given to that with regard to the negotiations that are going on at the moment, what's your assessment of just how important that is, particularly to the US? One would imagine the Gulf states regard that as a significant priority. There seems to be a different timeline as far as the negotiations are concerned.
Only an inclusive, comprehensive resolution is the one that's going to bring lasting outcomes. We should not only be laser focused on the nuclear file or on sanctions and the frozen funds. We should look at interference in general. And that comes in many shapes and forms. In the non-war phase, it's been proxies, it's been networks, it's been sleeper cells. And during the active war phase, you saw the missiles and the drones being hit on a daily basis. All of these need to be connected, Rob, for us to have something that works for all sides of the Gulf. And that's where we need to be focused. It's not only the Strait of Hormuz, it's not only the nuclear file. These files need to come together. And guess what? The MOU doesn't address these in a very particular manner. It's interesting that the early articles of the MOU do mention non-interference, but they squarely have it for Iran and the US vis-a-vis each other. Now, we heard from the Secretary of State as he landed in the UAE that the other files are also as important. I'll be curious to see how that unfolds in the discussions in the next 60 days if they don't get torpedoed by spoilers who want to go back to war, namely Israel and its coalition.
I want to ask you about the approach that the Gulf states might take towards Iran, because obviously there was, again, a great deal of tension between both sides during the war, during the attacks that you've just been outlining. But going forward, how do you think the Gulf states would be best served in the way that they approach Iran in the future to try to make sure that that doesn't happen again?
Well, the Gulf states carried out the wise approach by restraining themselves and not falling for the Israeli or Iranian playbook by attacking back. And I believe that they want to see an inclusive neighborhood in which we all share peace and prosperity together. Discussions did not stop, Rob, between us and the Iranians all along the war. And we've had in most Gulf capitals the Iranian ambassador remain. And those discussions continue. It's hard to maintain this cool-headedness as we have been attacked, but this is the kind of statecraft and maturity that we need to move forward. Iran needs to realize that we're not going to go anywhere. We're neighbors and we want to share the region responsibly. This will come together if we work our differences, and we have had better days in the past. Let's try to work our differences together and move to a better day forward.
Brother Al-Saif is a professor at Kuwait University and a fellow at Chatham House, and we're very grateful to you for being with us on Al Jazeera. Thank you very much indeed. Going to go to Lebanon now, where an Israeli attack has killed 2 people in the southern city of Nabatea. An earlier strike targeted Hezbollah fighters in the area. The military says they were located near a so-called security zone. It comes as Israel and Lebanon hold a 5th round of U.S. brokered talks in Washington, D.C. Israel's defense minister says the army will not pull out of southern Lebanon, even if the U.S. demands its withdrawal. Earlier, Lebanon's President Joseph Aoun has called for an end to Israel's occupation in the south. Heidi Petz, lifeless and tired in southern Lebanon. Talk to us, Heidi, about this latest round of fighting that's been happening.
So there have been a number of ceasefire violations from the Israeli side over the course of today and yesterday. There was that strike that you mentioned on the outskirts of the city of Nabatea in an area called Fetterman. Now, what we know, according to...
I'm going to play a clip about a physicist talking about the executive order from Trump about quantum computing. But before we do, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the super strong relief. This will help to reduce pain in areas of arthritis, bruising, a sprain, pulled muscle, even tension headaches. You apply it topically, it works within 60 seconds or 90 seconds or so. Super strong relief. Use it if you have that pain, that muscle pain or arthritis. Zeolite. This will help to detoxify your body, get rid of heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals. Take 3 small drops underneath your tongue and drink filtered water. Do that daily and you're detoxified. You can use this zeolite daily. Some zeolite you can't. This one you can. All right. Now, some people prefer a heavier detox. So you can, to do that, and they want to do a heavier detox once or twice a year, take 5 small drops or 10 small drops underneath your tongue, drink the filtered water do that daily until the bottle's done, and do that once or twice a year. But I recommend doing the 3-drop method, drink the filtered water, and do that daily. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the zeolite. Again, it gets rid of those heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals. Another thing that you need to do is make sure you clean your environment. Get rid of paints and cleaning agents that you no longer need. Or if you do need them, put them in a double-layered container to reduce the degassing, so you're reducing your exposure. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Whoa. What's that? I just built a budgeting app in Base 44.
Guys, Mia just built an app.
Impossible. You're kidding. And tonight, in the future of everything, 2028, you might as well circle the entire year on your calendar, because once again, we've got another big reason to call that the year of the future. Not only could we be back on the moon, maybe see artificial intelligence become super intelligent, we might even see the United States get their very first government-owned quantum computer. At least that's what the White House is hoping, with President Trump signing an executive order, a slew of executive orders calling for a quantum computer, and then something that they are calling quantum genesis. Now, the goal is big. It is to pull from the best quantum labs, build this sort of supercomputing hub, which would help in breakthroughs, transform material sciences possibly, and then, of course, there's the whole cybersecurity, national defense, encryption, decryption part of this, and that is huge. If you're rusty on your quantum state or your linear algebra, just remember this. If quantum computers get good enough, a lot of the math that we use to pay for everything, that tap of your credit card, that button that you click to buy something on Amazon, all that gets very weird, very wobbly, very vulnerable, which is not great for trust. And trust is like the whole point of money. And that's not even getting into the whole quantum warfare stuff, entanglement. We're going to need so much help for this conversation because we are way out of our depth. But fortunately, we have one of Caltech's premier theoretical physicists, Dr. John Preskia, truly one of the leading human minds on all of this. Dr. Great to see you. John, so first off here, then you want to start with the good or the bad? Or what do you think? Where should we go?
Well, we'll have to talk about both the good and the bad, and you already have. But all right, let's start with the good.
Okay, let's start with the good.
We're excited about quantum computing.
Yeah, what do you hope comes out of this push from the White House?
We already had a national quantum strategy. In fact, there was a national quantum initiative which was established in 2018. And this executive order, actually 2 executive orders, will update that strategy. The government is hoping to accelerate progress so we can have scientifically useful quantum computers in just the next few years, which we hope will have a lot of potential for making new discoveries. But one of the executive orders addresses the more disturbing side of quantum computing, which is that it can be used to break the codes, which we use to protect our privacy routinely whenever we communicate digitally. And as you remarked, if quantum computers become capable of code breaking before the world is prepared, that will be a very scary situation. It will mean that we won't be able to do online banking securely. We'll be vulnerable to identity theft. Maybe bad actors will be able to get control of our devices and use them against us. Fortunately, there's a solution to that problem, which is to make a migration to new codes, to new crypto systems, which we think will not be vulnerable to attack by quantum computers. And the second executive order emphasizes the urgency of the task.
Yeah.
Of converting to these new crypto systems in a timely manner to protect ourselves.
It can't come soon enough. Prime numbers are not what
I
they
think
used.
quantum computing is a little ways away, but especially for mainstream corporation type level. But we always have a tendency with new technology. There's that scare factor. We need this because there's danger around the corner. We have to invest in it because there's danger around the corner. Yeah, we need to tone down the danger a little bit. Let's see. Trump claims frozen Iranian assets to be used to buy corn and soybeans for farmers. Let's listen to MS Now on their take of Trump's.
Find your rhythm at Quintet, an iconic collection of 5 residential properties in Manhattan's vibrant East Harlem.
Let's get down to business. We're monitoring Wall Street this morning after a pretty rough day yesterday. All major indexes fell, largely dragged down by tech stocks. But just a few seconds before the opening bell, we're going to get into what's happening with David Gura, host of Bloomberg This Weekend and the Big Take podcast, and Brendan Greeley, contributing editor for the Financial Times, author of the new book, The Almighty Dollar, and fellow pride of Tulane University. Always a joy. Roll wave. David, we will keep our Tulane pride to ourselves here at the table and come to you first, because a lot of the past 2 days has really been about tech companies and how much they're spending on AI. It's been a concern for a while. So why are we starting to see it manifest now?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It has been a persistent worry for a lot of investors that maybe investors have gotten over their skis. These AI companies have as well. And so what we saw yesterday with Micron, one of these AI infrastructure companies that makes chips, was a real sharp dip. That company reports earnings today. Look, there is this overarching fear that so much money has been poured into the prospect of AI and there's been very little return on investment so far. How much patience are investors going to have to see that kind of payoff? You ask why it's happening now. The kind of confluence that we're seeing here is with the Federal Reserve indicating it's likely to hike rates perhaps later this year. That's giving investors pause as well. So those two things coming together really contribute to what we've seen over the last couple of days. And again, Micron reporting earnings today. We'll see sort of what that company has to say about its prospects and the prospects of AI more broadly.
And of course, that cheering was the opening bell. Sadly, not for David's points, though very well made. Brendan, the markets are looking a little better this morning. So were the past 2 days more of a bump in the road or something else?
I think we're looking at the shift from AI, from this beautiful story about the future, about how it's going to be awesome and better, to understanding AI as just another product. And when you look at it, we have good research. Bain has done this on how companies are actually using AI. And we're figuring out 2 things. One of them is it's not unambiguous in the way it makes things more productive. It takes a lot of oversight. We're not necessarily, in all cases, saving time or saving labor. So this promise that companies are going to become even leaner, even more productive through AI, it seems like it's running into some friction. The other problem is it's expensive.
Yes.
And when we talk about AI changing the future, that's often executives in Silicon Valley who aren't really thinking about the costs personally of the tokens that they're using to spend on AI. But if you look across an entire company using tokens to code, and tokens are, again, just a fancy way of saying dollars.
Yes.
To code or to automate certain administrative tasks, it's really expensive. And now you're looking at a problem, which is that these companies don't just sell the future, they sell a product. There's not enough uptake in that product. They're not providing enough revenue. And these extravagant promises that they're making actually are not borne out in valuations. Eventually, with every new technology, the dream comes crashing down and you're looking at a product. And I don't think that this is going to be a collapse in value. I do think it's going to be a more realistic take.
Yeah, it's a bit of a reality check, right? Absolutely. Because if you're saying I'm going to change the future, but you can use it now, people are going to say, cool, it's the future now, and as everything in my life is changing. I think the reality is more people start figuring out how do I adopt AI is it's not really doing everything that you said that it was going to do. And I wonder if that's what the markets are starting to reflect.
Yeah, absolutely. And these promises are ridiculous. Like it's going to cure cancer. It's going to fix global warming. It's going to be taller and smarter.
Right.
Yeah. And I think what we're actually looking at is people sitting at desks, looking at spreadsheets going, this is expensive.
David, I want to pivot away from AI briefly to oil prices, which keep dropping and are now only a few dollars away from where they were before the war started. That's something the president himself is touting on the road. Diesel prices now below $5 a gallon, first time since March. Gas prices, though, are still up nearly 32%. This morning, President Trump said he's ordered the Justice Department to look into why they aren't falling faster. But we got warnings from oil executives early that this isn't just a switch you can flip on and off and see immediate prices fall at the pump. So talk about what's happening here.
That's exactly right. So look, this war started very quickly with the bombing campaign, and we saw the immediate effect that that had on the global economy. It is a harder thing to unwind what's happened here. We've seen the devastation that's been wrought on the global economy as a whole. So the president may wish for those prices to go down. He might encourage companies to lower those prices. He very well may be instructing Bitchute to do that, although I haven't confirmed that myself. I don't think that Bloomberg has as well. Look, there's a real level of frustration here. The way that oil markets, the way that energy markets work are not instantaneous. Purchases are made well in advance here, and this is going to take time to kind of equilibrate. And I should say that the broader point to make here is that this is still something that's based on a hope and a prayer. Yes, there's this memo of understanding. Yes, there's been this initial meeting between the vice president and his Iranian counterparts with some other intermediaries. But we've seen very little tangible progress here yet on ending cessations in any kind of permanent way. So we're seeing the oil markets react to that. The hope that that could change, Ali. But again, it's not permanent. And again, there's such a long lag time here when it comes to energy. It's unlikely that we're going to see that move down in gas prices that's dramatic or diesel prices that's dramatic anytime soon. Yes, they're coming down. That's a good thing for everybody, for businesses, for consumers. But I should point out both gas and diesel still markedly higher than they were before this war began.
Also, if I put the politics lens on this, it makes sense that President Trump is trying to get out on the road in these swing seats and say prices are coming down amid an affordability crisis that voters have been cleared. They are top of their list for concerns in the midterms. At the same time, though, if these talks fall apart and they feel pretty tenuous, that promise immediately falls by the wayside. And I think, Brendan, what you and I were talking about is if we're in the vein of promises made, promises kept, you look no further than states that have a lot of competitive races, and they also have a lot of farmers. I'm thinking specifically of places like Iowa. And when you look at the impact that farmers have felt from the Iran war on fertilizer, on prices of oil, but even when it comes to soybeans, and better you than me looking into the data on this, but you've said that it's striking.
Yeah, I was curious this morning. He made this promise we're going to sell soybeans to Iran now. This is very similar to promises he's made for.
Which the Iranians say that's not what's happening.
Yeah, sure, of course, it never is. But he also many times in his first administration and again has promised that China is going to buy more soybeans. I was curious. I actually dug into the agricultural department data on this. They break out exports of soybeans by country. Strikingly, every year that Donald Trump has been in office, exports of soybeans to China have dropped. You cannot fix these things through diplomatic fiat or trade negotiations. You have to create an enduring and reliable market. And one of the things that we discovered is that in a trade war with China, China knew that soybean exports were a pain point politically for Trump in those states. And they also knew that they could get soybean exports from Brazil or from Argentina. And so I have a hard time understanding, in the middle of all the other things we're asking of Iran, that they're magically going to start importing enough soybeans to make up any difference from any other country. It's just, I think we have to file that under the massive file cabinet of just stuff Trump says that has absolutely no purpose on reality whatsoever.
No purchase on reality, and also no tangible impact on the people that he's saying
Absolutely.
to. If we stay with the politics of this moment and the money for a little bit, David, we've been talking about yesterday's midterms, and I have to ask about the one congressional primary here in the city where tech companies spent millions. They targeted Alex Borez, who supports regulating AI, ended up coming in second. But he argues that it was a close race and that people are excited about his vision of regulating these AI companies. The irony, of course, is that Michael Lasher, who also won, says he's going to regulate AI, so we'll see what happens. But do you think that we're going to see more races like this come November, that the AI companies hear someone say in a primary or in an election, I want to regulate these companies, and they can pour in tens of millions of dollars against them?
Absolutely. I mean, an incredible quantity of money was poured into this race, I think $25+ million. And look, this issue of what happens to AI in terms of regulation is a roiling one here in the US and around the world. And I couldn't help but think back a few years to when cryptocurrency was all the rage, and there was this concern among those companies about how they might be regulated or not. In Washington, the same sort of thing happened that led to all kinds of malfeasance with Sam Bankman-Fried and others who were really leaning into political spending. I think we're at a kind of similar moment here where you have, as Brendan was talking about just a moment ago, the excitement and enthusiasm about the prospect of AI, feeling among those companies that they have to build something that is something. There's a rush to do that, and they see any kind of regulation, particularly rigorous regulation, as an incumbent to that. So I think going into the midterms, we're bound to see much more spending like this. And again, I think that kind of historical analog to what we saw with crypto just a few years ago is very front of mind to me going forward.
And by the way, crypto is still very much spending in politics.
Yes.
Just what we need. More money floating around here. David, Brendan, we will leave it there for now. Thank you.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver gels. Dual purpose. It helps to improve your skin. You can use it as a daily skincare. You can put it on an abrasion, a cut, a minor burn. It'll help to heal it quicker. Super important. You can get it in a quick dispenser called Renew or the tube form. But make sure you have some at home or at work. You never know when you need it. And you can also use it during the cold season or during the allergy season. Put it on your hands. Lightly coat your nostrils. They'll stay active for 5.5 hours. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nano silver gels. And lastly, collagen. Collagen will help to rebuild your joints. If you have a sports injury or arthritis, this will help to remodel the cartilage and also cushion the joint. Help to reduce pain by blocking the pain gatekeeper NAV 1.7. Also, it will help to reduce the erosion of the joint by blocking MMP3 and MMP13, and reduce inflammation by blocking EP4. Take the collagen to help to remodel the joint if you have arthritis or a sports injury. Also stack it with the collagen that I have. So you have the ingredients to remodel the actual joint. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. That's the end of my broadcast. Thank you for listening. Make sure that you go to my store and get the great supplements. Take them regularly. They will help you improve your health and wellness. In addition, please share the links. And I do all these videos for free. So please help support the work by subscribing, being a paid member to Patreon, and purchasing the great products that I offer. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.